I think this is the shortest we've ever come back.
I was about to say, this is the quickest we've ever come back to one of these things.
Well, I suppose that's what happens when the content gets good.
Yes, the content gets good, and basically it's not a fucking marathon march, because ARR is bloated to hell and back.
No kidding, and I think we've basically ranted on ARR for the 5th time in a row?
Yeah, this is the 5th episode. Anyway, hello everyone, welcome to the Big Cat Aethercast. I am your host, Ray.
I am Leo.
And today we are talking about a couple of things. For starters, well, mainly, again, this podcast is to help me guide Leo through Final Fantasy XIV. And today's checkpoint is him getting through all of the Dragonsong War patch quests, which is patches 3.1 to 3.3. We are also going to be covering the Warring Triad subquest, as well as the Alexander raids.
Now, I have actually done more than this. I have already done Void Ark as well, and Manderville, but I wasn't able to go ahead and complete the entirety of the pre-Stormblood content before today's episode, so we're going to actually save that bit for the next episode, which obviously shouldn't take that long for me to get through, but I figure rather than have a super long episode and then a super short one, or 2 episodes that are way too quick back to back, this is sort of the compromise that we came up with that was better just for a hearing experience.
Yes. That was kind of what I had planned on, and although I would love to talk to you about Hildebrand right now,
right,
I can be patient and we can save that for another time.
Right. So I think the better way to go ahead and start off is you want me to talk about plot and then you can talk mechanics for certain things, or how do you want to do this?
Well, I was going to explain the story of the patch notes. You were going to cover the story of Alexander.
Okay.
And I will still cover mechanics for the most part.
Okay. So why don't we talk about character updates since the last time we were here?
Right.
So I did actually start and push through Mechanist up to 50 now.
Mm-hmm.
And so the Mechanics quest line involves you helping out Stefanivian, who is one of the members of House Hallinart. His father is actually the machinist on paper, the head machinist on paper, but he is the one who actually does the work and who the tribesmen follow, who the workers follow.
Right.
He's assisted by his second in command and maid Joy, who is a healer who was basically taken in as a maid, and she eventually, through her own desire, joined the workshop and is one of their premier gunslingers. Also, who was there but later left and had to be recruited back was Rostovan, who is a Rogadin pirate who basically had some falling out with the serpents, with the storm serpents, but he's eventually convinced to come back and act as a mentor, teaching you the beginnings of gunslinging, and he also helps in advancements later on. And for the most part, I bring this up because in comparison to Dark Knight, the story actually breaks out a bit differently, especially in the patches closer to 50, in that you will actually have one job quest, which you get a lot of story fluff, and then there is a second job quest, and it's like, okay, now you're going to have your combat encounter where you pick up your new job action.
All right.
So it's very different in the way that it's bifurcated out. And so eventually this is about proving, guns can be useful. It's not just a fad, or it actually is combat viable. And by the end, you actually do another PvP section. Spoilers, this is not the first PvP section you have in Heavansward, but it's a PvP section where you basically have a skirmish to test out the efficiency of gunslinging in combat.
It's a solo duty, pretty much.
It's a solo duty, but it's stylized as a PvP encounter, just with bots.
Right.
And so you complete the combat encounter. Stephanian proves himself to his father of being worthy to run the workshop wholesale, and we get our look into the level 60 storylines antagonist, who is a douchey knight from House Zamile. Of course, it's House Zamile.
Of course.
Who I don't remember his name for, but I'm just going to call him Lord Touchebag. Because he is a douchebag, but his name starts with a T, and that's all I can remember about him for right now. So Lord Touchebag is basically going to be your antagonist from the 50 to 60 quest line, and I will save any further discussion of that for the next time around when we get to it.
All right. Any other job quests you've taken care of?
I finished off Monk, which I briefly hinted at in the last section as being a sort of light and dark counterpart. There are actually 14 chakras, 7 light, 7 dark. We inadvertently meet up with 2 Mikote girls who are trained in the dark side. Dark Master turns out to be a psychopath. We have to rescue them from him. And in doing so, we have a dramatic fight outside of Little Almigo in order to awaken our 14th chakra, which puts us on par with the Master, and cinematic anime duel commences.
Ah, okay.
It's pretty standard stuff, but I'm hoping going forward into Stormblood, we'll have a much more interesting time as far as that quest shakes out. The last thing that I have done prior to this is I have gotten Minor to 60.
Ah, you've gotten Miners to 60. That was actually the first Gatherer job that I did.
Yeah, and I think of the 3, I haven't touched Botanist at all.
It's basically the same thing.
But with wood.
Yes.
But I at least enjoy it. I at least enjoyed mining more than I enjoyed fishing.
Oh yeah, fishing sucks. Fishing is not my cup of tea. I do it, but it is...
I was going to say, says the Omnicap.
Says the Omnicrafter. I know.
Yes.
I know. It doesn't really mean much coming from the psychopath who did every single crafter and gatherer job.
Right, but I will say that I enjoy the calmness of mining. I enjoy being in the earth and the trees. The story for Miner isn't anything out of the ordinary for ARR. And I think it's basically the same for all of the Disciples of Land, Disciples of Hand, in that there is a rival within your company who thinks of them as superior to you, but you constantly one-up them by incident, and therefore they have a jealous rage against you. Because it's a very similar tone to Blacksmith and Culinarian, and Miner basically has no difference to that. The only thing in Miner that's different is that a rival's father is someone important within the mining company, and he basically is thrown under the bus because everyone realizes, hey, wait, who's the one authorizing all these dangerous digs? Oh, it's this fucker? Yeah, we should shit can him.
Yeah.
And it basically is, and basically the guildmaster's like, look, I know he's a shitbag, but he kind of is the one who saved me, and he only did this because he thought that I was trying to one-up him, so I know where you're at, so help me go ahead and smooth this out. And even the rival's like, yeah, my dad's a shitbag, I ratted him out, but like, he deserved it, and he needs some talking sense into.
Yeah.
So... that's how that ends up working.
I believe that same that Rogadin antagonist from the Miners Guild, I believe he's the same guy in the Blue Mage quest line for Heavansward.
Really?
Yes, because his son plays Siegfried.
Huh.
Yes.
Interesting.
In the Blue Mage thing, he plays Siegfried.
Okay.
Yeah. And he always is doing shady shit. Yeah. I will tell you that the Alchemist one was actually rather interesting.
Remind me, the Alchemist one, you're actually working with one of the 6 siblings from the Thaumaturgist Guild.
No.
No?
You're working with this pure mad scientist sort of mentor who's just very idly like saying, okay, go do this. I'm too busy working on this. Turns out he's trying to revive a corpse of a lover.
Ah, okay. I bring up the Lalafels because there are 6 thaumaturgists within the Thaumaturgy Guild who are all siblings. They have a 7th sibling, but that sibling has no talent with black magic, and instead is sort of pressured by their siblings to practice alchemy. And eventually, the big gimmick is they unearth a void sense spirit that was sealed away in an earthenware jar, and that spirit possesses them so that they can do magic at the cost of corrupting his soul.
Right.
And so you basically have to purify him and say, no,
this is not the way.
This is not the way. The Minor 60 quest is interesting because you join up with this band of sellswords who works under House. I forgot Horshafant's.
Oh, Fortans?
Fortan. Under House Fortan, which is basically this Rakshak band of mercenaries, and they call you the professor because they're the first intellectual that's been assigned to them. Fun fact: the professor was the nickname that I got in Fallout 4 when I joined the Railroad.
Really?
When you join the Railroad in its official capacity in Fallout, you have the option. You're given the option to pick a code name of 4. I think the default is like the Shadow or something.
Yeah.
Because it's spooky. But if you have certain attributes or certain skills unlocked, you can actually suggest other names, and the Professor is one of them for high intellect characters.
Oh, cool.
So the fact that I got nicknamed Professor twice in a row is kind of funny. The storyline with the sellswords is that they have a new guy who's nicknamed Hatchling because he's green and behind the ears, and basically they're trying to go ahead and get status in the world, but Hatchling is too hot-blooded to not be a guard because he wants to go out on an adventure.
Yeah.
And so eventually it gets coincided that the sellsword captain is holding back this young blood because he wants his brother used to lead the mercenary group and led them into ruin, and he had to deal with the option of leave his brother behind or save the mercenary company, and he chose or save his brother or save the mercenary company, and so he saved the mercenary company and left his brother for dead.
Right. This is starting to sound familiar.
The brother ended up in Idleshire and was the one to teach the goblins basic military defense, which is why Idleshire still stands. And he eventually passed on from some unspecified monster attack. But he did make something of himself and become a hero, and the sellsword captain is at least somewhat relieved and eventually decides, you know what, maybe I should let Hatchling go on his own way now.
Yeah.
And that's at least the extent of the minor quests in Heavansward.
I believe, I don't remember if it was the botanist or the miners one. I think it was the botanist one. There's another quest line in Idleshire where you're trying to help them basically make the soil habitable, and
sounds like botanist.
Yeah, it's probably botanist. And you're trying to help the people try to get their way of living up and running so they can actually survive properly in Idleshire.
One of the things that I found interesting, and is part of the reason why I've gotten back into crafting and making quest lines, is because they do interact in different ways. I saw from a clip of Ojo Shama on YouTube that the blacksmith guide has crossover with the paladin quest line, in that if you get blacksmith to 50, you eventually have to create a weapon for Bronze Bull, who is a famous famous soldier within the Immortal Flames. He actually shows up in the cameo in Holly Tally Hard. And so he shows up again in the Paladin quest line, and he'll actually comment if you completed blacksmith to 50 by remembering you from there, and makes additional comments in the same way that Alice makes comments about you when you encounter her in the patch quests, if you've done the Bahamut's Coil quest line.
Yes, which I still need to get you to do.
Right. So
but I think we'll do that like later on. Maybe we can do that for the next.
That might be good. That might be good. That might be good content. But it's one of those things where I'm starting to see more that it's a lot more interconnected in terms of do quests to get guild, invest skill into crafting to get, or invest skill into gathering to get materials, in quest skill and crafting materials to make stuff, sell stuff so that you can, and the cycle repeats.
It's a fucking pyramid scheme.
Well, no, it's an economy. That's how. If it was a pyramid scheme, it'd go one way. But it is a cycle. It is a cycle. Not as virtuous as we would like it to be, but it is a cycle.
Yeah. Most of my time, I'm just gathering stuff in like Endwalker areas and just like selling them at a reasonable price, and I've made a couple mil.
Right. So at least my plan going forward from here is to use. And so naturally, because I'm a part of the economics, I also have to be a part of the slave trade because I have 2 retainers on hand now.
Yes.
So we haven't talked about retainers. If you want to go into more of the mechanics of them.
Yeah, I can go ahead and do that. Basically, you're usually allowed 2 retainers normally, but if you go onto the Mog Station, I believe you can get up to 8 retainers, but you have to pay a monthly fee for them.
So you get 7 additional retainers on hire, and then if you pay for premium membership, you get an 8th, which means
No. You only get 2.
No. 2 normally.
Yeah.
You get a 3rd from premium membership, and then you can hire the additional 7 more if you choose a maximum of 10.
Yes, I believe that is. I forget if it was 8 or 10.
It's 10. I've done some research on this.
Okay, thank you for clarifying for me because I was not sure.
Yeah, so there's 8 additional ones you can purchase. 7 are at will from the store, and then the 8th is hidden behind premium membership,
which I don't have. But basically, you give them a job of some sort. I only have 2. One of them's a dragoon, and the other one's a miner. And you send them out on ventures. You get ventures from various other things: Beast Tribe Quest, Grand Company, yada yada yada. You spend them to send them out on timed missions. They could be anywhere from 2 hours long to 18 hours long. And they'll come back. They'll level up. They'll get stronger. They'll find more stuff, and you can get all sorts of stuff from them. You can also have them go out and sell stuff on the market board. They can only hold up to 20 items.
Right. But as long as it's 20 different items, it can be stacks of 99, but you can sell it in that much bulk.
Right.
You can also use them as pack mules because they can actually store like 175 items or somewhere thereabouts.
Yeah, god damn it. I have so much junk from when I was doing all my crafter and gather quest lines that I should probably get rid of.
Not get rid of them. Give them to me. I'm going to need them to power level my blacksmith.
I'm pretty sure most of the stuff that I have is used for goldsmithing.
Well, I'm going to go into goldsmithing at some point. So
yeah.
I think the 3 crafter ones that the 3 crafter classes that I'm going to focus on are blacksmith, armorer, and goldsmith because I focus on miner, and although miner covers a lot of bases, it also requires still wood and still requires leather.
Right.
Which has been kind of an annoying part of my backside, which I guess that's why you need to be an Omnicrafter, because it all circles into itself.
Yes,
and in that way,
you'll have those 3 quests, and then you'll realize in Shadowbringers, there's a whole series of quest lines involving the different types of crafter and gatherer quests, and oh shit, now I need to learn them all.
Right, and so at the very least, I can at least say that fishing is the most useless of the bunch, even though I would assume you need fishing, because that's the only way you can get certain fishes for certain alchemy recipes or for certain culinary dishes.
Pretty much.
But I've made 2 retainers of my own, both of them inspired by other friends' OCs. One is Ocharena, and then the other one is, I think I called her Valria. Both of them named after friends who, both of them are Makotes, both of them are based off of friends' characters. Ocharena is I'm going to have her as a gladiator, and then I think I'm going to have Valeria just be a straight-up miner.
All right. My 2 are a male Vieira and a Hrothgar, respectively. The male Vieira is actually based off of a character that I drew up called Hexer, and so it was as close as I could get them to look like that in-game. The Hrothgar was just something I made on a whim. I might redo them, because one of the things you can actually pick up from Ventures is retainer fantasias.
Right, because you start out basically designing them like any other character, but you do eventually unlock the ability to respect them to your heart's desire.
Yeah. Do you know of Shenpai?
Yes, I've seen them around. Sometimes I confuse them with another content creator, but yes, I know a Shenpai.
Yes, well, she made one of her retainers Horshaphant.
I mean, that's understandable.
Yeah.
That's understandable. I'm surprised that I would not be surprised that more people have not done that as well.
Yeah, pretty much. But yeah, so yeah, that's pretty much the deal with retainers. You can even glamour them up if you want. I just give them the base armor because I don't want to worry about all that stuff.
Right, but I mean, if you want to have like a Power Ranger go out and do chores for you, or if you just want to have them in their bikini outfit, I mean, there you go.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
I think that's as far as the bulk of my personal updates go. If there's anything you want to talk about, I would say now's the time.
I will say that because of your talking about Dark Knight, I ended up doing it myself. And I got it to level 90.
So unfortunately, I'm going to ask that you not go into heavy spoilers, considering that you're way ahead of me.
No, I will not go into spoilers. I will say that Heavansward, that Stormblood's Dark Knight questline is once again focusing on another facet of the Warrior of Light.
Okay.
Their remorse, their sadness.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, considering we just lost Horshaphon, I think that's an appropriate measure to deal with.
Yeah. I will say, at the very beginning, a kid shows up, and basically it starts off with your soul crystal being broken in half. Mm-hmm. This kid suddenly shows up saying he accidentally took half of your soul crystal's aether and will offer to give it back, but they have to do something with it first. And the second you see this kid, you notice that he looks like a child version, that he looks like the child of Ysayle and Horshaphon.
I have several questions.
Yes. Because he's got the face of a young Horshaphon, but the long flowing hair of Ysayle, as in the same model of hair.
Right.
Of Ysayle.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm scrolling through the script. That was not in any of the crack fics I had seen.
Yeah, but basically, you know something's up with the kid.
Right, yeah.
But okay. I'm not going to say what's up with the kid.
Okay.
But basically, something's up with the kid because he took part of your soul crystal.
Okay.
There's something funky going on with the kid.
All right.
Yeah, and his name is Mist, which if you're actually familiar with some of the lore, Mist is the last name of a lot of characters, of a lot of orphans from the Broom in Ishgard.
Well, also specifically, the first time Mist comes up, it is a village of summoners, which responds to a very specific summoner who becomes a party member at some point, who also starts out as a kid.
Yes.
Let's hope they also don't go through a incredibly suspicious aging cycle.
No, they don't.
Okay, good.
Yeah, but basically, Myste is the last name of a lot of orphans of the Broom.
Okay.
Yeah, because two of the characters from the Void Ark, the Sky Pirates, Leofard and his co-pilot, their last names are both Mist as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I think I missed that some point in the Void Ark storyline.
Yeah, but I just wanted to mention that. But that's all I've done for the most part. I don't think I'm going to be learning any more jobs. If I am, I'm scared it might end up being White Mage.
You also have to recorrect yourself on something with Reaper.
Oh, right. Yeah, so I forgot about a button in my Reaper rotation because I'm a fucking idiot.
So the way that I understand it is that there's in Red Mage terms, there's a manification button which gives you 50 points of your resource.
Yes.
And you forgot that button existed.
Yes. It's Plentiful Harvest is the move, because you're supposed to activate Arcane Circle. Arcane Circle procs for everyone. As they start doing damage to the enemy, you start getting stacks of stuff, which you then spend on Plentiful Harvest to get your soul gauge and do a fuck ton of damage. Mm-hmm. Which then allows you to shift into Reaper mode, do more damage, then do your combo, shift into Reaper, do more damage.
Mm-hmm. Which is similar to building up your red and blue bars as Red Mage to do your enchanted sword swings.
Right.
And rather than have to build it up naturally, you can do Manification at the gate to get 50 and immediately do a 3-piece combo at the start of the round without having to do much investment.
Pretty much.
Mm-hmm. But I think that covers as far as the personal development.
Yeah, so I guess we'll go ahead and start and talk about patch 3.1, As Goes Light, So Goes Darkness. So, we start off by being introduced to a new character.
Right. Creel?
Cryle.
No, Cryle, because it sounds like Guile, which she has not... Which she might have actually a good chunk of.
She is Cryle Baldessian, a.k.a. a fucking Final Fantasy V reference.
She is also the last scholar of Baldessian. If you remember from ARR...
The Isle of Vol had disappeared.
Not disappeared, got fucking nuked! As Minfilia was trying to get in contact with them to ask for their help and deal with the Asians when they were still the big bad.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they still are the big bad, but we have more pressing issues right now.
Yes.
Either way, Cryle has managed to go ahead and make her way to the mainland at this time, and is saddened to hear about sort of the state of the scholars of the Scions by the time that she reaches us.
Right.
And of course, this includes the loss of Thancred and Minfilia, as well as Papalimo and Ida.
Yeah, Papalimo and Ida are still missing, although we do occasionally see snippets of them.
So, let me ask about that. So I'm guessing they're in Almigo.
They're in Little Alamigo.
They're in Little Almigo.
Yes.
Why the fuck haven't we run into them yet?
I have no fucking clue.
See, I always assumed they were in actual Almigo, which is why we haven't seen them yet.
Yes.
Because the idea is, the way I understood it is, I'm assuming Ida, if not both of them, are from the area.
I'm just going to say this right now. Ida is from Alamigo.
Okay, so my assumption is that Ida and Papalimo got kicked out back there somehow, and realizing that they're basically behind enemy lines, rather than try and risk the way to get their asses back home, stick around, help the resistance, which is why Papalimo and Ida are sticking around there, and Papalimo's kind of like, I know you want to help them, but we kind of do need to get back. And Ida's like, no, we need to go and stay.
Yeah, and Ida's being a little stubborn.
But that is par for the course from what I expect from them. And so at least it's hinted that Ida might be going undercover at some point, because I think she changes masks.
She kind of does.
So it's at least hinted that they're still around, but they are preoccupied with other matters.
Mm-hmm.
So Cryle comes in and agrees to assist in setting things up, and she also takes a quick jab at Alphino.
Oh yes, because Alphino was quite the playboy of sorts back at the Studium.
Wasn't he 13?
Yes.
Which again,
one of the two youngest members to ever enter the Studium.
So I want to go ahead and phrase this properly because it doesn't get emphasized enough. Alphino and Alice enter the Studium at the ages of 13.
Yes.
They are the youngest students effectively to enter college.
Yes.
And Alphino just casually rizzing up these college students by drawing sketches of them like he is the art fucking Flophouse.
Yeah.
Really paints the kid in a different light nowadays, doesn't it?
Yeah, and then he's like, "Thank you, Cryle. That'll be enough."
Yes, she definitely has embarrassing big sister vibes.
Yeah, she's like, "Oh, the dirty secrets I could tell you about this wannabe smartass."
Mm-hmm. Nonetheless, we do have to. Her involvement is good because we need to go ahead and research more into how we can go ahead and figure out how to pull Minfilia and Thancred out of the ether because
we have no idea where they are.
No idea where they are, but presumptively, if we found Y'shtola floating around in the ether, it should theoretically be the same with either of them.
Yes, and so we go to meet with Master Matoya, who we borrow her crystal eye from. And I should mention that Cryle is also a user of the Echo like we are.
Right, which she's a Scion, she's a Warrior of Light.
Yeah, although her Echo isn't as powerful as ours is, she can basically communicate with animals.
Right. She has the omni-communication, but she does not have as much of a reincarnation as we do.
Yeah. Yeah. But basically, we go to Master Matoya's place, and Cryle says that she can't find Minfilia because she just fucking disappears somewhere through the... She follows her trail, basically, and says she just poofs somewhere.
Right.
However, she did find out where Thancred is.
Right. Which is somewhere running around in the Dravinian hinterlands.
Yes.
Which leads to us basically piddling around Tailfeather, eventually heading towards the Nath village, and finding, Thancred basically did get spat out by the life stream in the area, and he was completely butt naked.
Yes, and you know where the Nut King comes from.
Yes.
From the Dawn Trail trailer.
Mm-hmm. So, Thancred had to go ahead and run around killing things with bare hands and bare butts before he can go ahead and procure materials to trade for clothes and sort of reestablish himself. And he was basically playing gorilla in the mountains until someone came looking for him.
And he basically met up with the Vath, the good Nath,
Right.
and basically was working with them. It's also at this point that we find out that Rei'tan has been resummoned.
Which would be which you would think would lead to the extreme fight.
Yeah.
That would be anticipated by his reencounterment. But no! Someone else takes care of it for us.
The Warriors of Darkness.
Did you say darkness?
Yes.
Okay, good. I just want to make sure that I caught that that wordplay. So, the Warriors of Darkness, also known as Organization 5.
Yeah. Who are basically, if you ever saw the A Realm Reborn opening cinematic, are basically the exact same characters from that.
Right. And so they will show up a bit more in detail later on, but for the most part, they were hinted at the end of the Heavansward trailer, and are going to become obviously important once we get to Shadowbringer.
Yeah.
But we just get our first encounter with them right now. Snarky taunts are made, and they fuck off after killing Ravana for us.
Yes, they're fighting the primals as well, but we have no idea what they're doing because Elidibus is a fucking weird person.
Well, I don't even know if Elidibus is just weird.
I mean, his plans, they don't make sense sometimes.
I think spending so much time in the void does things to a person, and not necessarily for their sanity.
I mean, I'm just going to say this right now: the Ascians are fucking ancient. So if they've been around that long, I'm pretty sure there's a few screws loose.
Senility is probably a problem, especially. Senility seems to be an unrunning theme in Heavansward.
Yeah,
we'll talk more about that the next episode, unfortunately. But Thancred goes ahead and gets recuperated. We take him back for a nice hot meal.
Also, you notice he's wearing the fucking edgiest outfit possible.
Doesn't he get edgier?
No, he becomes a gunbreaker.
Right, but no, he's still not a gunbreaker yet, but he has the eye patch. He has his eye patch. He doesn't get his coat until Shadowbringer, but he's rocking it. He's rocking the eye patch like he's Beatrice, and he still has his daggers, but he does not have the ability to use his ether.
Yeah, that gets explained later on, but basically we'll just say it right now. Because of Flow, like how it fucked up Ishtol's eyes, it fucked up it fucked up Thancred's ether to the point where he can't use aetherite crystals and he can't use magic.
Which is a good thing why he eventually changed his classes later on.
I mean, technically he still can't use magic then?
Well, I mean, he's a rogue, but I mean, the magic in... Because it's explained that the magic for gunbreakers is different from the way that they're
magically infused cartridges.
Right.
But I'm just going to say this now. He can't infuse the cartridges himself.
Right, but that doesn't mean he can't use the...
Yes, he can still use the gun.
Yeah, he just can't refill them.
Right.
I mean, that's not as much of a problem, considering it's vaguely implied that basically ether is spitting out the ass.
Yeah.
Like literally at one point for a different quest line, someone says, "Oh, just leave him out there; he'll recharge naturally over time."
Yeah.
That's just like the same way you would casually say, like, "Oh, just go ahead and leave the sun panels on; it'll recharge."
Yeah. Anyway, when we get Thancred back to Ishgard, we start learning about some interesting things in the fact that Emmerich got an assassination attempt on him.
Yeah, literally shanked in the middle of the city streets.
Yeah.
Like, again, and I know you said that Stormblood is much more politically charged than Heavansward.
Yeah.
But this is still pretty fucking juicy as far as, like, stories goes.
Yeah.
And so, obviously, it comes out that people are still nervous and anxious and still think of...
They still don't trust the dragons.
They don't trust Lord Emmerich either. They think that this is a power struggle.
Yes.
Without any... dressing at all. So Emmerich is trying to go ahead and decides we need to go ahead and really diffuse the tension here. We need to officially say that the war is over, even though it's not yet.
Yeah.
But attempts are made to go ahead and discuss about dealing with
Nidhogg and his...
But the immediate concern is dealing with Emmerich's would-be assassins.
Yes.
Who we hunt down with Hilda in the broom and deal with them that way.
Right. And we find out that he was basically working for someone in the nobility.
who are also tied with the clergy, and they basically want to go ahead and they took a bunch of hostages and are forcing a coup d'etat.
Pretty much, and so we have to run through the vault again, which I'm pretty sure is just going through that place is a little traumatic for the Warrior of Light.
Probably, but we only have to go through, I think, like the first third of the dungeon.
Yes.
You don't actually do a full run. This isn't like a hard mode or anything. You basically go up through the big entry area, go up the first set of stairs, and then a cutscene plays in which the leader of the rebellion has a little girl hostage, does the "don't you make me do this," and then casually says, "Fuck it, I'm going to toss her over the roof anyway."
Yes.
Which he does. She actually falls, and it's a good bit and a half before
Vidofnir shows up.
Vidofnir shows up, saves the girl on their back, and then lands, and that is more than enough to at least convince most of the people there, maybe not all the dragons are shite.
Yes, because they show up, they rescue the girl. The kids are a little nervous, but they're thinking it's kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I don't remember what happened to that clergyman.
Presumptively, we either beat him to a pulp, or more likely than not, Emmerich just goes in and arrests his ass.
Yeah. I hope he was arrested, because I'm pretty sure my Warrior of Light would have put a scythe to his neck.
No, I'm pretty sure everyone would have extracted justice from him the old-fashioned way, but more likely than not, Emmerich would have...
Or should I say, I would have gone Dark Knight on his ass.
Yeah, no, well, I was a Dark Knight, so I was going to go ahead and... I believe my thoughts were, I'm going to reenact Sparta on you. So... This is Ishgard!
Boom! Okay, I might have to lower the volume on that, but... Anyway.
Still, Vidofnir goes ahead, saves the kid. We have some discussions about Nidhogg still being missing. And so we go ahead and we have some discussions about how we're going to proceed. One of which includes Lord Edmund basically gathering everyone around and saying, look, the nobility are being a bunch of shits. I'm tired of this nonsense. I'm stepping down and putting Artoriel in charge.
Yeah, basically, it's going to look bad for everything if I stay in power. So I'm just going to willingly step down, let my son take over. Oh, by the way, Warrior of Light, here's a shield with the same one that Horshaphant had.
In my opinion, I thought it was the same shield, but they reforged it.
Yeah.
Which would be all the more damning.
No, that shield is still at his grave.
Oh, right, that shield's at his grave. But still, I think it was meant to also be like, you're one of us now. You're
a member of House Fortance.
You're in the know.
Yeah.
But also, just as a refresher, because this is going to come up again, Artoriel and Emmeline's involvement from Heavansward is that Lord Edmund has two sons. One who's a little bitch, Emmeline, and one who's a little bit too much up his own ass. Also Emmeline, but also Artoriel to an extent.
Yeah.
So the deal was that he needed to go ahead and have his sons whipped into shape, so that way, in the event this happened, at least one of them would be ready, even though Artoriel was kind of going to be the leader. Because he was the older. And so this puts strain because Emmeline realizes, fuck, now I actually have to do shit. Yeah. Because with Artoriel being in charge, that means he has to delegate out other tasks to his brother, which Emmeline already didn't like doing, and now he's even doubly unhappy.
Yeah, this little shit. Oh.
Which is going to cause problems in the later patches.
Yes, which we will be getting to now. Patch 3.2, the Gears of Change.
So,
we actually get news. Flamine, Horibolder, and Coltonay have returned to the Rising Stones.
Well, we found out that when shit went down after the Red Wedding, they did the smart thing and basically took the first boat off continent. Mm-hmm. And so, did they actually go to... where did they actually end up?
I don't remember, to be perfectly honest.
I'm going to look this up on the fly, because I could have sworn like they went to either Hagane or Domna for the almost as a
Kugane or Domna. I don't think they actually went that far. I'm pretty sure they just went into hiding.
No, because they first off they got on a boat, so they definitely went off continent. Yeah. And then the second thing was they went to a foreign land, which was part of the reason why they were so eager to get the fuck back. Let me see here. Heavansward. The group were made hiding at Rei'tan.
Oh, they were hiding in Rei'tan?
Yes.
That's an Endwalker area.
So
they were hiding in India, basically.
Okay, so they were hiding at Rei'tan, and eventually they reached out to Tatar in order to ask if the coast was clear, to which Tatar confirmed and basically arranged the rendezvous. Unfortunately, it also meant that we had to go ahead and be careful about telling
Flamine anything about
Minfilia's missing.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, she was missing. That much we knew, but just the fact that we didn't know where.
Yeah.
So that was sort of the concern. We also get introduced at this point to Ochre Boulder.
Yes.
Who is Hoary Boulder's younger brother, and unlike Hoary, who is a paladin or gladiator, Ochre is a conjurer.
Yeah.
And I believe I told you this during one of the state transitions. The two brothers are basically hyping each other up and doing some practice drills, and two Elizin girls are basically trying to figure out which one of them am I going to hit on.
Yes.
The older sister trying to decide between the two brothers, and then the younger sister picking option C and saying, no, they're going to ship with each other because she's read too many boy love comics.
Oh, yes. Keep I hope you're invested in that because it gets silly.
It gets silly? Okay, good. I will say that
whenever you see the Boulder Brothers, be sure to talk to them.
I will say that I think aside from like Persona 3, which I've been playing, or Persona 3R, which I've been playing sort of synchronously with Final Fantasy 14, both worlds have some of the great side world building. In addition to the main story being such a treat.
Oh yeah, there's so much hidden lore and side stories. It's crazy how dense this cake is.
Yes, and we're not talking about a character from Stormblood.
Oh boy. Oh god.
So we had lunch before recording this, and I basically talked about the test of your reflexes meme, and you told me about the character who makes it. And that the meme that's associated with them is not that. It's about the fact that apparently the community thinks this person should be caked up. And there are literally mods that have juicy written on the back of their butt cheeks.
Yes.
Final Fantasy 14, man. So
yeah, you'll meet him soon enough.
So we go ahead and we have, hope that the Scions are rebuilding. Things are going back to the way they are. And then
Kryl basically comes up with an idea that basically, before Minfilia disappeared, she got a message from Hydaelyn to go back, and basically she theorizes that she hitched a ride on Y'shtula's flow spell into the Ethereal Sea. And so basically, we need to find a way to get in contact with Hydaelyn properly.
Which is theorized to be basically something to do with the flow, which apparently the Sharlayans were researching on at some point.
Basically, the Sharlayans had created something called the Anti-Tower to properly research the Ethereal Sea, to actually look into the center of the Earth and look to see what the fuck was ticking in there.
And that leads to the dungeon that we have here.
Yes, the Anti-Tower. So, let's talk about the Anti-Tower.
So
one of my favorite dungeons from Heavansward.
It's an interesting one to be sure, and I think I like it more. So, the Anti-Tower is very interesting. It starts off with you basically walking along magic platforms and going through waves of enemies that way, where it culminates in a giant frog, in a giant toad sorcerer boss fight.
Yes.
And I think his gimmick is that he basically summons minions to do
a big song.
Big song, which you have to deal with the ads so that way it doesn't have the full covering AoE effect.
Right. Or turns you into a toad.
Which is also the consequence of that. It was a fairly good encounter, and then I remember going into the Anti-Tower proper, and it's almost like you're doing, like...
You're walking on the ceiling.
You're walking on the ceiling of the Great Google Library. That's the vibe that I got.
Yeah.
And so...
I forget what the second boss was.
I don't remember what the second boss is either. Everyone knows the third boss, though.
Yeah, Calcabrina.
Which is Calcabrina, which is an FF5 reference?
4.
FF4 reference. And that one was very interesting. So it starts off with 8 dolls, 4 red and 4 blue. And you basically have to deal with them all because they do different attacks. Then they merge into the big doll, who then can imprison you inside other dolls and temporarily take control away from you until your party mates free you.
Yes.
Which is very interesting, and it has a very cool mechanic in terms of just dealing with the boss's pattern.
Yeah, I always love running the anti-tower whenever it pops up in my queues, because it's always kind of fun to do. Yeah, that's pretty much it. How would you rank it with the other Heavansward dungeons so far?
I think it's pretty good. I definitely think, considering I remember 2 of the 3 bosses and more or less the overall gimmicks in there. There's also some mammoth fights that you have to deal with. Ziggy the Spriggan. That was
Ziggy the Spriggan. Yeah,
that was the second one.
Oh yeah, he shows up again, or should I say, the son of Ziggy shows up.
Oh joy.
Yeah, but basically, that's basically a reference to Ziggy Stardust.
Yeah, of course, I figured. But, I think it was definitely one of the more memorable ones. Although, compared to ARR, you don't nearly have as many, like, dungeon raids or as many fights to where they actually have more impact.
Yeah.
I told you, I started losing track of ARR dungeons to the extent that when I started doing hard modes of them, because I finally went back and did those, I forgot that I went through certain areas, like the big one that was a pain was Copperbell mines.
Yeah.
I completely forgot about Copperbell mines. It had been a fucking while since I'd done Sastasha and Ma Totorak. Although Ma Totorak is a bit different just because of the reasons you go back there.
Yeah.
But I do remember going through some of the other areas, and then I did even some of the level 60 dungeons, like Hullbreaker Islehard, which are completely remapped.
Yes.
You mind if I take a quick moment to talk about some of the remastered dungeons? Because there were some instances that I did that were just completely bullshit.
Okay, go ahead.
So there's 3 points I want to talk about in terms of hard dungeons. First is Hawk Manor Hard, which is a revamp of the original Hawk Manor. You're basically re-exploring a different angle. There's a new evil that's there, and you deal with a different void sense. The boss in that era, Halicarnassus, basically works as your typical vampire boss. They do damage, they summon ads. Rather than letting you kill the ads, the boss will go ahead and get the draining blow off of them, get powerful, and then do a massive AoE called Blood Rain. This led to an instance in which me and my party were actually beating the boss so fast that we actually triggered a dead man switch in it. In that after it's supposed to do it 3 times. Once with an Ahriman, the second time with
a succubus?
2 unnamed succubuses, and then the third one with the prior boss of Hawk Manor.
Yes.
The name
Lady Almondine.
Lady Almondine. And so we were actually getting the boss solo at 35% prior to Almondine. When it killed Almondine, it would actually just party wipe us.
Oh shit.
And then apparently, like, we did this like 3 times without trying to, like, did we not kill the ads? Were we supposed to kill the ads? Because apparently this was my first time doing it and no one else could remember what the gimmick was. And then someone had asked their friend while we were running back to the boss door, was like, oh, I think we're killing it too fast. And so I was playing Machinist at the time. And so what I was doing is, aside from doing my 1-2-3 combo, which builds up heat gauge, I was also stacking on Wildfire, which is a bomb, basically.
Yeah.
As well as the turret that you summon with battery. So basically what ended up happening is we were doing too much damage too fast. And so I only stuck to doing my 1-2-3 when we got to that point, and the dead man switch didn't trigger, and we were able to survive, and we basically proceeded through the fight as normal. But that was the first time I've ever dealt with that kind of bullshit.
Don't worry, that'll happen again.
I am hoping it does not get to Shin Megami Tensei levels of card counting, because notoriously, when you do the Demi-Fiend boss fight in Shin Megami Tensei Digital Avatar 2, you actually fight the protagonist of Nocturne 3.
Okay.
Which is the Demi-Fiend.
Yes, I'm aware of that one.
And so the gimmick in that fight is you have to... It's a DPS race, but you also cannot negate things, and you cannot insta-kill things. Because and I don't know the exact mechanics, but I've always heard the expression of you're basically counting cards at a blackjack table, but you also can't get caught counting, and also the dealer can just pull out a gun and shoot you. because it does the same thing like when you fight the room managers in Persona games.
Yeah.
In which they basically have a similar thing, where if you try to cheat or you try to exploit their AI in certain ways, they just give up and say, fuck it, Megadolan.
Megadola own insta-kill.
Yes, and that's basically it. But it started with that boss fight because I think he predates Persona 3.
Yeah. Man, I forget Atlas games can really rip your balls off.
Yeah, so that was my first one. Second comment was, I'm impressed with some of the remasters on these dungeons, specifically Hallie Tally and Hullbreaker Hard.
Yeah, because originally you were supposed to be clearing out those areas because you were tasked to do that.
Hallie Tally was a dungeon raid as part of ARR.
Yeah. And
then Hullbreaker is a side content in, I think it's either ARR or Heavansward. It's unclear because it starts out at 50 and then the hard mode is 60.
It might have been a patch quest initially.
Yeah, but it starts out as a patch quest where you go basically bring up some of Mistbeard's coffer from Mistbeard, which apparently shook up.
Yeah. And
then in the hard mode in both those dungeons, they've actually been reclaimed by the Grand Companies. And so for the Immortal Flames, they actually reuse Hallie Tally as a training ground.
Yes.
And Hullbreaker Isle gets repurposed into one as well, including at the end of Hullbreaker, you fight Mistbeard.
Yes, because it turns out that Merle Webb's right-hand man, that Rogadin you see with the goggles all the time, is actually the current or last Mistbeard. Because it's like the Dread Pirate Roberts.
Yes. And so he puts on his metal helmet to cover his face and goes ahead and encounters you, or fights as Mistbeard midway through the fight.
Yes.
And then he has this whole treasure gimmick in which he'll poison you, or there'll be bombs and treasures, and you have to disarm them by picking the right chests in order to disarm it, or to heal yourself if you're poisoned. It's a good fight.
Yeah.
But the hard dungeons are pretty interesting remixes for the most part. The only one that was bullshit, and it's not even a hard fight, it was bullshit, is the patch quest for Ferociris.
Yes, Ferociris is not a good dungeon.
Well, it's not too bad. I mean, you're getting bombed from all over the place, and the siren fight is not really a fight. It's the mini boss before it that's the problem.
Oh, the zoo. So
there's a floating zoo, a mother zoo that made its nest midway up through Ferociris, and at basically I think at like 70% health, it spawns in a bunch of eggs. So naturally, when you see this, because you've seen this in Orem Vale before, you're like, oh, it's gonna launch a bunch of fucking ads. Let me go ahead and pop it. Wait, why do I have an immunity? Why am I dead? And so the gimmick is actually the exact opposite.
Yeah.
Rather than it spawning a bunch of baby zoos that you have to take care of before they hatch, you actually do not want to attack them and let the one or two eggs that do hatch of their own volition, and just let them peck at you. Because what happens if you destroy them, one, you draw aggro upon yourself instantly. Two, the Mama Zoo gets a massive power boost.
And then she flops on you.
And then she basically flops on you, insta-killing you and wiping you out, because you're actually not supposed to attack them.
Fun fact, that flop is actually a move that you can learn as a blue mage.
And it's funny because I told Ray this off camera. This is like a scene out of Tales of the Borderlands, but instead of being a Mexican standoff where you're pointing the guns at the enemy's pointing a gun at its own kids and saying, "Try me, I dare you." Is basically I basically explained it as the Canadian standoff. Is basically how that encounter went. So yeah, definitely stands out as one of the more fun dungeon encounters. Definitely a good one to be enjoyed.
Okay, but definitely a little bullshit.
Not too bad, though.
Yeah. Anyway, where we were was we had just done the Anti-Tower, and we had gotten access to the Ethereal Sea, where we find Minfilia. Oh, what's up with her?
Oh, I've seen this story before. This is the part where the goddess takes over her willing servant's body and is now talking through us as a
mouthpiece.
As a mouthpiece, which is basically what has happened to Minfilia. She's no longer Minfilia, but now the word of the mother.
Pretty much, because Heidelin basically used up all her energy in ARR, was growing weak, and needed a little bit of an energy boost.
So, Heidelin also goes ahead and explains, I don't have much time, but Zodiark is back on his bullshit.
Basically, she was talking about how she sealed Zodiark in a moon bound, which basically means, yeah, Zodiark's on the moon. That's why the Ascians are up there.
Wait, you sealed him in the moon? Did we not learn nothing from 4? Because Final Fantasy 4...
Yeah, and apparently the Alligans weren't the only ones who sealed something in the fucking moon.
Is this like freaking King Kai's planet, where we're just randomly shoving people into the planet? Next you're going to tell me Bojack's in there as well.
But yeah, she said that, and then she basically explains that with every calamity, there is a rejoining of sorts.
It does get explained a little bit more in detail, but I'm going to leave it as that for purposes of this explanation.
Yes.
Because I do at least somewhat understand it, because I have done Zelfatol by this point.
Yeah.
But that's as far as I've gotten in the patch quest, so I'm just going to leave it at that. Although I kind of understand what they mean by rejoining.
Yes. But basically, 7 times the world's been rejoined. 7 times has Zodiark gotten back a piece of himself, basically. And basically, he's starting to get a little too wild in his cage.
Although there was some good reason for that.
Yes.
So either way, basically, Minfilia ain't coming back. She is, for all intents and purposes, gone.
Yes.
Which is something we are sworn to secrecy by Kryl to not tell Flamin.
Yeah.
I don't know if we ever do.
I don't think we do until it's... I think it's kind of brought up in a later patch quest. Don't hold me to that.
Okay. So, yeah, it causes some ruffling of feathers specifically for Thancred, who is kind of at a low point, not just not being able to use Ether, but basically failing to protect the one person he was supposed to.
Failing the one person he was supposed to take care of, and basically the one person he loved.
Yes, much.
Even though he's a fucking womanizer, he always loved Minfilia.
Every womanizer will tell you there's always one.
Yes.
There's always the one.
And Minfilia, and I don't know why he liked that white woman so much. Because she had the personality of stale bread.
Well, there were other charms, I would imagine. And we have this conversation, this conversation occurs between Thancred and Kryl while they're hacking into one of the Garlean outposts because we needed to steal some tech for them.
Yeah.
But that's where we get that tidbit of conversation. Eventually, we do go back to Falcon's Nest because...
Emmanuel has been tasked with shit.
Emmanuel has been tasked with shit, and we cannot trust Emmeline to boil water.
So basically, there's a whole bunch of shenanigans around.
But the reason we're there is because Falcon's Nest is going to be...
the site of the peace treaty.
The peace treaty in which Vidofnir and Emmerich are going to basically sign a peace treaty. There's supposed to be some mosaic that's going to be unveiled in honor of their unity. And so Emmeline is tasked there to keep the peace. We decide to go there as well. And this leads to one of my biggest complaints, and probably one of my only complaints, about the Dragon Song War patch quests. So, we have seen, through various interactions, that the Echo grants us a lot of benefits. We're effectively immortal because Heidelin basically brings us back every time. Even though death in Final Fantasy kind of already was a joke in and of itself.
Well, technically we aren't immortal. We just have a very good blessing on us.
Functionally immortal, for plot purposes.
Yes.
We also are immune to tempering, which is considered the strongest form of mind control and domination possible. It's not hypnotism. It's not corruption. Your very essence is overwritten by a primal. And you are basically taught nothing else but to love and devote yourself to them. It is so powerful that there is no known way to cure tempering. But Warriors of Light and Scions, anyone who is blessed with the Echo, is basically immune to primal tampering.
Pretty much.
Tempering, sorry. So, in light of all that, what would you expect to happen if you were to induce a mild roofie? Fucking out like you had 12 beers the night before. And that is probably one of the few complaints that I had about this fucking game. I can believe the fact that we are not that we can be protected from mind-altering aliens, but a roofie? Nah, fam, you're going to fuck to sleep.
I mean,
and there are so many different reasons why this shouldn't work. I could believe the fact they intended to kill us, and the worst we got was a little nappy time. But no, we were drugged intending to go to sleep, and it worked! The fuck, Heidelin? You couldn't get us into a better healthcare plan?
No, I'm sorry. You only get the benefit of tempering. I'm sorry, you're still a lightweight when it comes to drinking.
And the memories? And the echo? What was that? Just part of AT&T surveillance?
Pretty much.
Yeah, that kind of irks me that the Warrior of Light, Slayer of Nidhogg, down by one roofie.
Slayer of gods and dragons alike.
Absolutely disheartening. But this was again part of the traditionalist plan because they wanted to cause some shit, throw the peace treaty into chaos. And so Emmeline is forced to act in our stead because he's the only one with any authority. And he basically tells the guard to make it stop. And so what does the guard do?
Shoots the girl.
Shoots twice. Once in the arm and then once in the head.
Well, thankfully she survives.
Somehow. Because apparently death is fine, but not poisoning. But it causes a massive distrust against Emmerich's faction because Emmeline was so incompetent for perceivingly striking out against an innocent woman. Because, granted, all she did was poison us and try to cause some domestic outroar, which could have been handled with more tact.
Yeah, like literally they could have just had a guard go up there and bring her down.
Right, but Emmeline having no ability, no tact, no ability to socially interact despite him being the professed ladies' man between him and his brother.
Yeah.
But panic gets the better of him. A master riot starts out, which does result in deaths of other soldiers, although no one particularly important.
No,
but it does cause a massive stain on Emmerich's record as a result, as well as on House Forton.
Yes, and then Emmeline basically hides and cowers, and as a result, his little child butler Anawa gets fucking bloodied to a pulp.
Right, he is also not dead, thankfully, but he does get some scars for his troubles.
And when Emmeline finds out, he gets all huffy and snippy at both us and Thancred, and literally, this is the first time I've ever seen my warrior like saying, I am about to punch this fucker.
But Thancred, however, reads our minds with the echo and bitch slaps him for us.
To be fair, only we have the echo. None of the other scions have the echo.
Okay, but it seems like Heidelin said just this once.
Yeah, pretty much. Although Thancred's kind of like a person who could probably read us.
No, he has more social grace than almost anyone in the entirety of the scions. He has the lowest autism score of the group.
Fair enough. I'm pretty sure the highest is either the Warrior of Light or Y'shtola.
I was going to actually say Urian J or Alphino. It's a tie between those two.
You're right.
Although Alphino's kind of lowers his thanks to his interactions with Justinian.
Yeah.
So he gets a little bit more worldly, but I think of the bunch, I still think that Urian J is probably the one with the highest autism score.
Every single member of the Scions is on the spectrum somewhere, and they're also not straight.
Right?
None of them are straight.
Bisexuality is required as a requirement to join the Scions of the Seventh Dawn.
At a minimum. But anyway, Thancred beats some sense into Emmeline.
No, I think he just beats depression into him, but he eventually comes back and realizes he kind of needs to grow a pair. So it does go ahead and encourage him eventually to get his act together.
Yeah. And then after that, things kind of... Emmerich wants to kind of boost morale with the rest of the Alliance.
Well, the problem that Emmerich sees it is that the people never got to see a big battle. All they know is that we basically went down into Azislaw and bitch slapped the hell out of out of Thornton. So they never actually saw us or never saw the masses deal with Nidhogg the first time around. Although that does become an issue later on. Anyway, we do go ahead, and so Emmerich, thinking the people need a spectacle to sort of, one, unify them after that shit show of a convention, and two, to go ahead and give at least the soldiers some bloody satisfaction for not having a full-out war, he arranges basically
a grand melee.
A grand melee with the three companies of
Eorzea
in order to go ahead and give the people a show. Mm-hmm. And so it's at least arranged for Ishgard to go ahead and fight Ul'dah, Limsa Lominsa, and Gridania in a 3-on-1 melee. Mm-hmm. And it's basically agreed that through begging, it's basically begging, but through political maneuvering and begging, Warrior of Light and Emmeline will also fight for Ishgard, and leading the Eorzean alliance, it's going to be Raubahn and Pippin, at least, that also joins the side.
Yes.
Which
you really never see Lalafel's fight properly.
Well, and even then, like Pippin, you do see pop up. Even actually thinking about it, even Papashan, who I got to see extensively in the Paladin quest. In the Ul'dah quest line, because Papashan is a paladin, but he's retired effectively. He only basically puts on his armor when shit gets down and he needs to protect Nanamo.
Right.
Because otherwise he addunes his civilian garb and tries to keep a low profile. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, sometimes he can't do that. Nonetheless, Pippin, who is, by the way, Raubah's adopted son.
I mean, that was kind of obvious.
Well, not necessarily. I actually have a detour about this.
Okay.
So, at 3 points in the Final Fantasy XIV plot arc, we actually do have interracial couples. Mm-hmm. And so, the obvious one that we know of is Hilda, who is the...
half Hyur, half Elezen.
Half Hyur, half Elezen. But specifically, it is an Elezen male with a Hyur female.
Right.
And the reason that's brought up is because people have mass speculated that the genetics in Eorzea basically works like Pokemon rules. The mother determines the primary race of the child, and then there are augmenting features of the father.
Yeah. To be honest, I'd love to see more hybrid characters.
Which, and people have even asked for that. Like, I know for a fact that some people apparently have complained and asked for, why can't we have Night Years as Hyur to show like a half Elezen racial aspect, or scales for an Alra aspect? Like,
yeah,
it has been asked for.
I mean, for fuck's sake, in the Warrior quest line, there's a Rogadin crushing on an Alra girl. I want to see what they look like together.
So if you have a Rogadin father and a Lalafell mother, does that just make another Hyur?
I don't know.
Or is that kind of a Storm Potatoes type situation?
I don't know.
But
I was saying Alra and Rogadin.
Alra and Rogadin. Okay.
So I would like to see like a Hellsguard with like scales or something.
Or like, let's just throw genetics completely out the window. Hrothgar and Viera.
Yeah.
What does that hybrid look like?
That'd be interesting, because both of them have weird
eccentricities in their own species.
Yeah, like there's more males in one and more females in the other.
Right, but and then even then, like the because I think the job tutor for Gunbreaker is partnered with a female Viera, who they are both running away from the Garlean Empire. Mm-hmm. And so just imagine what that love child would look like, because we were talking earlier about Haurchefant with Ysayle.
Yes.
So, but they're both Elezen, so that kind of works. So we don't get that question from them.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, that's just interesting diatribe to have there. So
yeah. Anyway, moving on, the Grand Melee happens.
The Grand Melee happens, which is the actual first instance of PvP combat, which is kind of a scam, because it doesn't actually matter. It just is basically there to build up enough points, and then eventually Raubah's like, okay, I've had enough of this shit, and forces you into a one-on-one duel.
Yeah, which is kind of cool, to be honest.
It's actually really fun because one, you get to actually see what a fight against Raubahn would look like.
Yeah, and even though he's one-armed, he is still kicking ass.
Right, and then basically once you bite down Raubahn, the points in the background automatically total up to where you hit 100 first.
Yeah.
Which is how the melee combat works. It's like a team death battle rules. So basically that's how that works. And it eventually, of course, Ishgard claims victory. It seemingly works to go ahead and raise people's spirits. And so people seem to be okay continuing with the alliance going forward.
Which then leads to the actual ceremony, where Vidofnir appears and Emmerich shows off the placard, which is basically a symbol of Shiva and Hraesvelgr together.
Right. It's, again, one, stripping away the lies about the cause for the Dragon War, and two, again, presenting the
unity.
Symbol of unity, which is unfortunate because the party gets crashed by Nidhogg.
Or as I hear some people call it, Nidstinian.
Nidstinian?
Yes.
It sounds like something you would ask your doctor about.
Ask your doctor if Nidstinian is right for you.
Pokyo Coke.
I can't believe we got that right.
You know, the working title for this podcast was 2 Hrothgar, 1 Brain Cell.
I mean, fair enough. But basically, Estinian goes basically ham and stabs Vidofnir in the back.
With his lance, for the record, not in the traditional way, which I would make the stabbing joke.
Yes.
But no, it turns into a bloody bloodbath. Apparently, cultists also get into the fray and stab people, but that's not of any civilian folk. That's through Estinian's chaos.
Yeah, him basically commanding his brood, basically.
But remember, and in case anyone forget, remember that dragon cultists still maintain their human form before being transformed into dragons, because that was Nidhogg's grand revenge.
Yeah, grand plan to basically turn every single member of Ishgard into dragons.
Right. Nonetheless, Vidofnir does survive,
thankfully,
but they are still injured, which again which unfortunately causes more chaos in the community and puts Emmerich in even greater of a bind.
Yeah, because basically the entirety of Ishgard is just shouting death to Nidhogg.
Right. And so eventually it comes down to like, okay, we have no choice at this point. We need to get Hraesvelgr to help us, who still does not want to go ahead and help you and thinks that you're all full of it until Midgardsormr shows up.
I should mention that we are now in patch 3.3, Revenge of the Horde.
So...
yeah, so basically, the party first talked about the fact that Estinian still might be in there.
Well, he still has not fully dragonized, and even if he does, there's still a part of him that remembers the dragon training, so there might be a way to bring the man out of the beast.
Yes. And so then we go to speak with Hraesvelgr, who does not want to deal with the shit until Midi literally shows up and says, hey, I've been here this whole time. I trust these people. You should trust them too. You're my son. Do what I say.
Fine, Dad, but I'm not going to make it easy. They have to go through a dungeon run against me. And so Hraesvelgr arranges combat at Solkai.
Yeah, Sorkai.
Which is its own dungeon, which is pretty straightforward. It's more akin to an alliance raid than it is its own dungeon. But it basically is the same thing. You go against increasingly difficult waves of dragon hordes, eventually culminating in a fight against Hraesvelgr themselves.
And midway through it, you actually have to fight Mogwyn.
Mogwyn? Really?
Yeah. Didn't you fight the Moogle?
Oh, yes, Mogwyn. Okay, you have to forgive me. I briefly dipped into Elden Ring again.
Oh.
So
you were thinking of Moog.
Nihil!
Ow.
So I was thinking that when you said Mogwyn. So, forgive me, the Great King, the Moogle Mogwyn.
Yeah, the leader of the Moogles.
who apparently agreed to also partake in this and got thoroughly thrashed.
Yeah. Whoo, boy, that was a spike on the... on the recording.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
But you may need to put a...
don't worry, I'm going to lower the volume for this because it's a bit loud today.
But yeah, it's your basic dragon fight. I think between Stone Vigil, Nidhogg proper, by this point you kind of understand what to expect out of your dragons. And this one is by no exception. He is still a great boss fight. Somewhat difficult, but I think just the right level of challenging to prepare you for what's to come.
I don't remember if they've reworked this dungeon or not. I think they have. Because I remember jumping on many more platforms while fighting Rei'tan.
Jumping on platforms?
Yeah.
It might have been reworked then, because I do not remember having that much of an issue. There was some platform jumping, but I don't believe it was extensive.
Again, I think I've only run this dungeon like 2-3 times tops. Because it never shows up in roulettes.
Okay, as of patch 6.3, Rei'tan has only fought on one big circular pedestal.
Yes, that's it.
So yes, you are correct. It has been changed.
Yeah, that's what I thought, because it was way different when I started it.
Okay, and this is part of the reason why we did this series, because of the differing experience between someone who was coming through it before some major reworks.
Yeah, during COVID, pretty much.
Yes. So you go through Sorharkai, confront Rei'tan, and he eventually goes ahead and says, fine, I'll go ahead and throw my backing behind you.
Into which Alphananda says, well, when does Nidhogg do you think he's going to attack? Proceeds to roar, signaling his attack.
What happens in Ishgard today? Nidhogg begins his attack. Cue Always Sunny in Philadelphia music. Nidhogg begins his attack on Ishgard. It's basically what ends up happening to that. So here's where we get close. Pretty much, it's the beginning of the end. We come back. We have some preparations within the city to make sure that everything gets set up, and we go back to the Steps of Faith for the final confrontation with Nidhogg.
Yes, and which first off, Rei'tan and Nidhogg fight each other in a very climactic clash, which is pretty damn awesome to look. They fly up into the sky, and the sky is alight in white and red. And it just shows you the true power of dragons.
Yeah, and they do. It is a very good back and forth. Obviously, Nidhogg still manages to come on top, but Rei'tan does kneecap them to go ahead and keep the scales even for when your fight comes into play.
Yeah, because basically Rei'tan had given up one of his eyes to us to use as a means of fighting back against Nidhogg.
Right.
And then the song starts playing.
Yeah, that song.
Yeah.
So
the Heavansward theme.
The final Steps of Faith is probably this is where I said, okay, they should have made this part of the patch. They should have just made it part of the main content because it just fits so good.
Yeah, it is a really, really good fight.
I remember this one arguably was probably the most challenging fight to date. I remember, I didn't get down because I was playing Dark Knight, but it definitely downed a lot of people around me. And I remember on my first run through, I think we were at 5% and we lost half the party. And it was and both of the healers were down, so it was all.
It was a race to a finish.
It was a race to a finish, and I remember having to pop, Dead Man Walking, or
Living Dead.
Living Dead. I always call it Dead Man Walking, but Living Dead. It sounds like a JoJo stand either way.
Yeah,
you're saying the Japanese version, and I'm saying the Americanized one because we don't want to get sued by copyright.
Yeah,
but I had to pop Living Dead, and we managed to go ahead and wipe the boss before my timer ran out. And so you managed to go ahead and beat back Nidhogg to the point in which you get him
back into Estinian
into the Estinian mode, but the eyes are still fused hard onto his body, and the Aetherite just does not want to come forward, and it's looking to try and fuse to either you or Alphino.
Yeah. And so basically you keep ripping and ripping, trying as hard as you might, and then all of a sudden the spirits of both Horshafont and Isael show up.
I think that was probably the second time I teared up, just seeing Horshafont come back to help us pull out the eyes of Nidhogg out of Estinian.
And to which Emmerich says, "Throw it over the bridge!"
I feel like, really? They could just fall and hit each other down there, and just throw it over the bridge, damn it!
Yeah, so here's a bit of a lore thing that I don't think it's explained properly. Mm-hmm. Basically, below the Steps of Faith, the bridge to Ishgard, there is a etheric maelstrom happening down there of ice and wind and stuff that's basically no living person can survive it.
It's basically the Mariana Trench.
Yeah.
of ether.
Yeah.
Okay, that is not explained at all.
It is not.
And that's why I'm like, really? It just seems like they're just going to fall down into and hit the floor eventually.
Yeah.
There is no floor for them to hit. Fair enough.
Well, there technically is, but no one could survive down there.
Sure.
No living person could survive.
No living thing could survive down there, and the ether would basically just tear it to shreds.
Yes.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, I'm just going to say this. I'm just going to say this right now because you've probably. I don't know if you saw this in the patch quests already, but those eyes are coming back.
Oh joy. No, I have not, but
they're coming back.
Okay, but hopefully we will. Wait, I think I kind of remember this because I remember seeing a meme thing. I think I know where this goes, but I'm not 100% sure.
Don't worry about it for now. Just keep it out of your mind until it happens.
Okay.
But basically, at this point, you rip the eyes out, the spirit of Nidhogg floats into the sky and dissipates, and you shut the eyes to get rid of them, and the Dragonsong War is over and done with finally. Nidhogg is slain.
Right.
And Estinian has been saved.
He kind of still is a little salty about it, but he goes ahead and is too beaten up to really sass Alphino back much.
Yeah, and we finally get to see what he looks like out of his armor.
Right. Which canonically is the first time you see him outside of his armor. Although I always thought it was one of those.
Although technically you saw him in the Dawn Trail trailer.
I've seen him multiple times, but without armor. But canonically, this is the first time we're supposed to see him. It's kind of like a Goblin Slayer situation if you're not supposed to see his face.
Right.
But we do see his face because he is no longer burdened with being the Azure Dragoon.
Right.
So I guess that kind of makes sense from a character point why we would start to see his face now.
Right.
In another move mirroring ARR, Emmerich decides that a theocracy based on a hereditary bloodline is no way to rule a country.
So
therefore, we need to give it back to the people. We go ahead and we're going to make parliament.
We make the House of Lords and the House of Commons, and somehow Emmerich still ends up running the fucking country.
Well, because they nominate him for Lord of Commons, even if they will not have him as Pope.
Yeah.
So it's like, fine, I will go ahead and do this. He's kind of, he's George Washingtoning it up.
Yeah, he's like, I don't want the crown, but I will lead this country if I have to.
Right. Which I think is basically more or less that's more or less how the Dragonsong War ends for our purposes.
Yes. Lord Edmund closes the book on it at the end, and it shows Memoirs of Edmond du Fortemps, Heavansward.
And I was kind of scared because it shows him sort of, oh good, I'm finally done with this. Now I can die. Because he just sinks back into his chair and it's like, is he dead? And then you find out, no, he's not dead. He just needs a little nappy time.
Yeah.
Because he's tired of his son's bullshit. I will spoil one quick thing. It's a 3.4 thing, but it goes back to my point about poisoning.
Yeah.
Because the first thing that happens when you start 3.4 is you get a dinner invitation from Emmerich, who basically like, hey, it's been a while. You want to catch up over dinner?
Yeah.
And it's basically a cutscene where he's basically just asking about your adventures. Like, shit, I wish I could do that.
Yeah.
And there's this one part in which there's this long protracted scene of his house Carl like getting you drinks. And I had this sinking feeling in my heart, wondering like, are we going to get fucking poisoned again? Why are you taking so long on this shot of the servant pouring drinks? What purpose does this serve if we're not going to get poisoned?
Oh boy.
And so I had a minor aneurysm watching that after having been... I know I didn't go back to back that quickly, but that was the first thing on my mind when I saw that scene. And so I was calling out bullshit still for not having poison insurance for being a warrior of light.
Yeah, but hey, you had a nice dinner.
Surprisingly so. One that did not end in death or poison, in death or getting knocked out.
Yeah, I'm willing to bet your Warrior of Light and most Warriors of Light that play this game are very self-conscious about their drinks from now on.
I would imagine so. I think that will be a running gag, at least internally, for my... I think that might be... If there's any Warrior of Lights who take Culinarian as your crafter... I believe that is purely out of the belief that someone will poison their own food unless they themselves cook it.
Fair enough. I mean, I've maxed out Culinarian.
So
that was actually the first crafting class I maxed out.
Oh, good. You learned at an early age.
Yes.
But yeah, I overall, my thoughts are very clear. Dragon Song Patch Quest should have been included as part of ARR, or Start of Heavansward standard. It just completes the story in a way that ending with Thordain's raid seems like a flop in comparison.
Yeah, I will not argue with that. It does feel like it ended on a bit of a cliffhanger.
I kind of feel like swap it. I feel like you should resolve the dragon plot first, and then have the cult, and then have the popes basically in hiding, because then what would have happened is we could have had Pope Wars. Yeah. and as dorky as that sounds, because only like a historical or religious nerd knows how dramatic the Pope Wars were in real life. So a fantasy Pope War where you have the advantage of actual magic and actual dragons would have been a hoot. Yeah. And then I feel like you could have had the double Ascian fight and then end with the Pope still doing the thing. I feel like, but the only problem, but then you could have actually also had Horshaphant still die, focus more on the dragons at first, have the Pope be to the end, and I feel like that would have been maybe a more appropriate way, because I feel like the emotional weight of dealing with Nidhogg would have been the perfect way to end original ARR, and then dealing with the Pope and his Knights of the Round would have been a more appropriate patch quest.
Yeah, I could see that. I will say that I think you would like this video. I've mentioned it before. This video on the Dragonsong War reprisal.
Yes, I haven't seen it yet, but basically it is, what if Horshaphant survived?
Yes, it's basically, what if you saved Horshaphant? What happens from there? But you need the whole context of the entire raid, because it's an interesting raid.
Okay.
But I can show you that later.
Yeah, but that takes care of at least the patch quest for for ARR, and now, so the next time we talk about story beats, it'll be build up to Stormblood.
Yes.
So let's go back in time and let's talk about...
Let's do the Warring Triad.
Triad. So you had asked me about doing the Ampedor series prior to this, and I told you no, I hadn't done either of them. As it turned out, I had actually done the Lost
City of Ampedor.
I had done the Lost City... No, I had done this Ampedor Ruins.
Yeah. But
the Lost City of Ampedor I hadn't done, so we did that unsynced.
Right.
And so we went through that one.
And that's actually for the Shadow of Mach raids.
Right, which is also known as the Void Ark.
Right.
But Warring Triad. So the Warring Triad occurs at the same time as part of researching where Minfilia and Thancred are. Although I think you only actually unlock it after Thancred's in the party.
Yeah, I believe so.
Because he does show up in the background. But eventually we get approached... we get called by...
a weird little kid in a mask named Unakalhai.
Unakalhai, who basically agrees to help us, but basically says that he needs help dealing with the war, something that the Alligans left behind. I'm going to mix them up so much.
I know. The Alligans left behind 3 primals that they had captured during their conquest of Mericidia.
Which were Sephiroth, Sophia,
and Zuravan. Which are basically Final Fantasy VI references. Because they're basically the trinity of espers that keep magic in balance.
Mm-hmm. So, starting with Sephiroth, which was probably the more interesting of the 3.
Which also plays a fucking Nine Inch Nails song.
Right. No, absolutely. You told me it's going to be a Nine Inch Nails song. Like, how much of a tribute it is, and we went through it together. I'm like, oh no, that is absolutely 100% Nine Inch Nails.
Yeah.
But that one was interesting. It starts out as sort of your typical primal fight, and then he seemingly goes down halfway and then comes back in his giant form.
Yes.
And the gimmick with that one that we died to once was that he basically does an area-wide AoE that will kill unless you destroy a target that's behind you that goes ahead and pops you up into the air, preventing you from taking damage.
Right.
But the boss, the entire time, is doing knockoff attacks because it's on a platform.
Yeah, there are these blue circles that you have to get close to, but not into, which he will then punch, and then they will knock you back.
Right, and I think at least one of the deaths was me getting too close to the circle, that I was in it, and therefore I took the full force of the punch and died.
Yes.
Although I think I was not doing tank in that. Was I doing tank in those raids?
I think I was doing tank those raids.
Okay, because you were working Dark Knight, and I had agreed to take on probably Red Mage.
Yeah.
Either Red Mage or Monk, because... I think it was Red Mage, because I was not doing... I was not doing Monk still. I kind of needed to figure out my fashion for that.
Right.
But I was doing Red Mage, I think, for the most part. So we did that. Fairly decent one. Sophia was more interesting, I find, because that one, she basically plays the part of the adjudicator.
Yeah, she plays the adjudicator because the whole arena is basically her scales. Because she summons like 2 scales on either side of the arena. And you have to see, because there'll be lines pointing to them, and you have to see which one has more lines, because that one's going to be the one that makes you shift that direction.
Right, and you have to counterbalance for it. So that one was actually, I think, more fun. I didn't have any issues dying in that one. And so, Unokalhai, because it's basically, the raids follow a similar structure. You have discussions with Unokalhai, go to Azizla, find where the Ascian is being kept. Oh, by the way, the Garleans are also investigating this as well, and they want a piece of the primal knowledge too.
Yes, because they still want to find a way to stop primals.
And so we have Regulus Van Hydra showing up as our villain for the day from the Garlean faction.
Who we did fight in the Aethercast research facility.
Yes, and he also comes back again for second helpings to try and again get something out of the expedition, although he's not accompanied by the Emperor this time.
No, the Emperor's back in Garlemald at this point.
However, Regulus does go ahead, and we do see some animosity in that Unokalhai basically sets up, after the first raid, he basically sets you up to try and go after Regulus separately. And there is a chance you could have actually killed him, but for the fact that you need to pull back to save Kryl from a mechanical hand that had got a death claw that had managed to go astray.
Yeah.
So, and eventually, I think it's Urion J who notices, like, we set up powerful magic fucking barriers. Who the hell dismantled them in such quickly a time? And then Unokalhai basically slips to you, it was me, I did it.
Why?
Because I want revenge.
Yeah.
Yeah, Unokalhai is a little bit of a shit. He's kind of like a dark Alphino in that he's very smart, he has good intentions, but he has no idea for social graces.
No idea for social graces, and he barely knows what he's doing for the most part.
Yes, and so he gets very much little kidded by Kryl, who, again, big sister energy, she just instinctively knows how to bully a younger boy.
Yes. And then finally we have an encounter with Zuravan.
Who basically makes the Garleans his bitches and requires a team up with Regulus in order to basically make him vulnerable for the raid to occur.
And Regula ends up getting bifurcated by it.
Because Unokalhai can't deal a blow to the
Primal
to the protection program to keep the primal contained.
Yeah.
Resulting in Regulus stepping in the way and taking a fatal blow for him, which results in his passing.
Yeah. And then Regula kind of imparts some dying wisdom to Unokalhai to be a better warrior.
Right.
Which is kind of interesting.
And it's a very interesting aspect because aside from Junia, we don't really see too many Junia said, we do not see too many friendly Garleans.
Yeah. And
so I think he's probably the third that kind of comes into the ones that are decent enough, even though we fight against Regulus quite a bit.
Yeah, we're like, we know you're fighting for the Emperor, we know you're doing this for him, but we can tell that you're not a piece of shit like some of the other Garleans have been. And
we actually get an explanation as to why. Regulus, the entirety of the Garlean Empire is very much aristocratic, not unlike the Ishgardians. And there's very much a cronyism system in which you're appointed by how well your family does, not necessarily your merit.
Yeah.
Regulus actually won by the emperor's merit, and basically was appointed over the protests of the other nobles, which has led to situations in which, initially, when it's believed that information is leaking about disdain in Regulus's camp, it's actually plot that it's infighting amongst the Garleans, not Unal Kalhai's machinations.
Yeah.
And so that's also a side plot that gets mentioned in there.
Mm-hmm. So, with that, we finally get to fight Zurvan, the demon of fire and ice.
Right.
So, what'd you think of that fight?
Honestly, it was good, but compared to Sephiroth or Sophia, I'm actually drawing blanks on his gimmick.
Yeah, it's just basically a whole bunch of AoEs and a whole bunch of ads.
Yeah, that definitely sums it up quite well.
I mean, at first the fight starts with him trapped in the confines. You don't even see that he's a centaur.
Oh, right, that is true. He does end up coming out and then becoming more of this centaur beast monster thing.
Yeah, because the thing is, the three warring triads are each supposed to be representative of three different beast races in Mericidia. Mm-hmm. Sephiroth is supposed to be for a tree people. I'm not. I think Sophia's supposed to be some sort of human race or some human similar race, and I know that Zurvan's is supposed to be for a centaur race.
Okay.
Which I don't think we'll be going to Mericidia anytime soon. So,
it ends up working out all right. In the end, Unal Kalhai gains some growing experience, learns to trust the Scions a bit more,
and he actually reveals some interesting facts about him.
For one, he was raised by Elidibus.
He was rescued by Elidibus from his dying world,
which
is the Void.
Which we get more further explanations on in 2.4. Man, that's going to be a long episode, long patch to actually talk about. Thinking about it now.
Yeah, but basically, the Void used to be a normal world.
Right.
Until it was overcome by a wave of darkness that turned everything in it into void scent, basically.
Right. Now, how and why, that's a story for another day, but the important thing to understand is that Unal Kalhai was basically supposed to be the Warrior of the Light.
Yes.
But all of his predecessors died before he could actually come of age. So Elidibus basically pulled him out and tried to raise him so that way he could eventually fulfill his destiny.
Or something of the sort.
Or if not, be useful in this world to do the same thing.
Or end up being useful as a pawn for the Ascians.
Which is more likely than not what is intended to happen. However, the full extent of what Elidibus has planned is not yet apparent. But the Scions, at least at this point, see no reason to distrust Unal Kalhai, and so he is welcomed with open arms, although he himself still needs to go ahead and find himself a bit more.
All right, and I will say this now. The next time we deal with him is post-Shadowbringers.
So we're not seeing him for a while.
Pretty much.
Okay, so let's talk about Alexander, because this was an actual adventure to go through.
Yeah, me and Leo actually did the entirety of the Alexander raids in one night, pretty much.
Yeah, that was a heck of an adventure. So, let's talk about the plot, and then we can go through... let's talk about a bit of the plot, and then we can go into the...
actual battles.
So, in the Idleshire region... there's this pond that's covered by
a dome.
And for the longest time, you probably have passed by it a couple of times, specifically when you're in the Google library or wondering, what the fuck is this thing? What the fuck is it? And so we find out post Heavansward main scenario that this thing was buried underneath the waters and gets awoken after the events of Heavansward.
Pretty much.
And so the Idleshire residents are basically trying to go ahead and find out what it is. And in doing so, they come across two characters of note. The first is a female goblin within the ranks who is uncovered a mysterious rock to go ahead and has etheric connections. This is nothing out of the ordinary, at least by their standards.
Yes.
The other is a
blue-haired Aura by the name of Mide,
who was part of a treasure hunting group in the area, who has a particular interest in technology, in part because she's a machinist, and in part because her beloved, who was also an Aura treasure hunter, was trying to explore this area before, but she doesn't initially tell us this.
Yes.
At some point, the monument stirs, and one of its arms becomes accessible to investigate, and thus leads to the Sun series of raids.
Yes.
We find out that the creature is inhabited by goblins, and they are working on building machinations to come forward.
Yeah, they're trying to create a utopia. By the way, these goblins are known as the Illuminati.
Who are led by Quick Mind All Things?
Quick thinks all thoughts.
Quick thinks all thoughts. Boy, you will see that Darth Vader looking motherfucker quite a bit.
Yeah, he is not. Quick thinks all thoughts and his little cat Schrodinger.
Oh, that name's not auspicious at all, isn't it?
Of course not.
So, we have 4 main raid fights within the Sun series of raids,
which is the Midas. Which is the Gordius.
Gordius level. So Gordius deals with just interesting portions within here, starting with the Oppressor.
Which is just a big machine that fires a whole bunch of lasers, and then near the end of its fight, it summons another copy of it, a 0.5 version.
And attempts to blow itself up in the last 10 seconds, which is a total party wipe unless you kill it.
Yeah, basically they tether to themselves. You kill one, you have to kill the other one really fast because it's going to start a self-destruct sequence.
It's not as tenuous as it sounds. The 0.5 version is pretty weak by comparison, and by the time that you finish with one, taking care of the other one is not that bad.
Yes, I should mention right now that this is when the game was still figuring out how to do normal raids. So there's a whole bunch of exploring through the machinery to get to the bosses.
Yeah. A lot of so there's lots of ad encounters. It's not like, it's more akin to a mini dungeon than it is to something like an Alliance raid.
Yeah, it's a very mini dungeon. It's like 2 encounters and then the boss.
The next encounter is a series of Illuminati soldiers. I don't remember too much other than...
It was just ads after ads after ads.
I remember. This is the one in which we're in a square arena. The enemies are mostly dropping bombs on you.
And you have to get into a little machine to kick the bombs out of the way, otherwise they will cause damage.
Right, I do remember that now. The next fight is the Living Liquid.
Pepsi Man!
Which is quite interesting, and so I have not attempted the extreme versions.
Yeah.
But I understand that this motherfucker takes place in there.
Yes.
And so I have been the meme that I was told about this was that the only reason because the Living Liquid has nothing to do with Alexander or any of his predecessors.
Yeah.
But he's there because Yoshi P really needed a drink.
Really?
Yes, that's the joke. For those who don't know, the Wandering Minstrel, where you get a lot of your extreme raids and a lot of your rematches. That's self-insert. That's Yoshi P coming to basically retell tales of your adventures and re-exaggerate them.
Yes.
For flavor purposes. Living Liquid has, I think, the start of the electromagnetic mechanic in which basically one side's positive, one side's negative. Don't touch or you're going to cause an explosion.
Yeah, so basically, if one side's plus, one side's negative, spread apart as far away as possible. If both sides are the same, get as close as possible, because otherwise you're going to get knocked into the electric field.
Right, which causes more damage.
It's a bit interesting. It's one of the more interesting fights.
Right, and for the most part, the basic plot in the background, aside from finding out why Mide is coming along with you, it's also with the female goblin who's also accompanying the party at this time,
which I forget their name.
I'm looking them up as we speak, just so that way we can go ahead and reference them, because all goblin names are very weird. Let me see here. I don't think it's Slowfix. Slowfix is one of the...
No, Slowfix is one of the members of Idleshire.
Yes. Hang on. I need to go maybe to one of the other ones to try and find out.
But while we're doing that, the last boss of the Midas of the Gordius
Round Rocks.
Round Rocks. Thank you.
Yes.
But basically, the last fight of the Gordius section, or the Fist, or the Sun section, is the Manipulator, which is a big machine, kind of like the Oppressor, where you have to attack the limbs first, which will then cause it to become vulnerable for the main core. And it'll summon a whole bunch of lasers at you, a lot of following machinery. It is very simple, very simple.
Right, but it is a requirement because it's going to be repeat a pattern that the big boss eventually uses in the future.
Yes.
So eventually you clear it once. You manage to go ahead and deal with the heart, which we believe is to be a power source to the machine. Disable it, remove it, take it back to study.
Yes.
So we initially believe that's the end of it.
Yeah, how foolish we were.
In fact, there's another power source in there that gets reactivated as the party is investigating. And despite attempts to interfere with the communications of the Illuminati, it doesn't seem like they are able to be interfered with. And if anything, All Mind Quick thinks everything is going according to plan.
Yeah, because of the Enigma Codex.
Media explains that the Enigma Codex is basically a kind of...
supercomputer, basically?
Parts supercomputer, parts secrets of the universe. It basically is supposed to be something that allows time travel. Although we're not told that initially, we're just told that it's a very valuable piece of magical technology, of magitech, and that basically it's something that would be valued by anyone who understands what it's worth.
Yeah, pretty.
And even Sid, Wedge, and Biggs basically understand how big of a deal it is. But the Enigma Codex has been shattered for the longest time. No one knows how to assemble the entire thing. At least so we thought, until we found out that Round Rocks actually has a piece of the Enigma Codex.
Which is why she's being hunted.
By the Illuminati. So we go through the Father raids next.
Which are the Midas section.
Yes, this is the Midas. And so we start off with...
Ratfink Twiddledinks.
Who is one of...
which is the potion one.
Oh, the potion one.
Yeah, where it would boost itself up with potions, the slam down.
The ones that you transform into animals with.
Yes, because I forget which animals you turn in. I know one of them's a bird to evade.
One's a bird and one's a gorilla.
Right. The gorilla's supposed to knock things away, and the bird is to avoid the ground-based AoEs.
Right.
Which, it's an interesting fight. I don't do it that often. But the thing about that fight is that if you're the tank, you've got to switch off to the other tank after you've taken a few hits, because otherwise you get completely stunned.
Yes.
Which my off tank was not doing.
That can lead to some problems.
Yeah. But thankfully I survived it most of the time.
Oh, good.
Yeah. But I was like, come on, switch off, switch off, switch off.
So, yeah, that you definitely need to deal with that for Alexander Midas.
Yeah. And then the second boss is a 4 bosses, which is Blaster, Brawler, Swindler, and Vortexer.
These are 4 smaller robots that look kind of... You think we would kind of mesh together with Oppressor if you put them the right way.
Yes.
But they are basically... You fight these 4 in basically consecutive one-on-ones.
Yes.
Basically, your party runs up to them, beats them in a fight, moves on to the next one, beats them in the fight, moves on to the next one, and so on.
Yeah.
I remember we had difficulty with Vorter at the end.
With Vortexer. Yeah, the thing is with Vortexer is that it will do basically an instant wipe unless you get behind an ice block that can form.
Which we were completely missing the entire time we did this.
Yeah.
Also, minor correction, it's the Father raid that's the Father series that's first, and then the Son raids.
Oh, really?
Because it works off of the Holy Trinity, the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Although in this case, it's the Father, Son, and the Creator.
Okay.
But we'll get to the Creator series in a bit. But yes, so That's the one that works for. That's the second level of Midas.
Yeah, and then if I remember right, Swindler's whole thing is the elevation.
Yes, it basically it grants certain buffs or debuffs depending on whether you're attacking from an elevated or a depressed platform, and its attacks also target based on what kind of platform you're standing on.
So if you're targeted to be damaged on high, you have to get to low.
Correct.
But yeah, the blaster, if I recall right, is the one that shoots off giant lasers that can really knock off a tank's health.
Yes, it is. It is very powerful. Lastly, the next one is actually a fight with Quick Think Salt Thoughts, where we think that's where we're going to have the end of him.
But no. Basically, that fight is he's on a giant mechanical bug, and he will occasionally stun some characters and put them in cages.
He will stun 2 characters, drag you off into a trap, which has to be then disarmed before you can rejoin the rest of the fight.
One of the traps is a fire trap, the other one is a mob trap, and then another one's a poison gas trap.
I got trapped in the poison.
Yeah.
So, the arena also has a bunch of spike floors, so you do have to be mindful of push attacks as well as your positioning.
And even a giant rolling metal ball.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very weird fight, which kind of fits for a goblin, don't you think?
It does, but I don't think that Quick Thinks is that difficult. But even at his perceived demise, he doesn't go down. Everything is still going according to plan.
Yep, so he flies off and stuff like that. And then we get the final fights of Midas, which is against Brute Justice.
Well, first, it comes off as a rematch of Oppressor, and then Blaster, Brawler, Swindler, and Vortexer come back. And then they combine to become Brute Justice! It's absolutely a fantastic fight. It's a remaster of the metal theme from earlier fights, and it's been changed into a tokusatsu theme, basically.
Pretty much.
Which is absolutely great.
It's a fun fight, because halfway through it, all the parts disassemble, and it's just an onslaught.
They basically do all of their signature attacks all in succession to try and go ahead and pummel you.
Yeah. By the way, you can actually learn a move from this guy for Blue Mage.
Oh, cool.
J-Kick.
J-Kick.
Yeah.
Nice. But yeah, so you deal with Brute Justice, and now you've defeated 2 hearts, 2 cores down. Why the fuck is Quick Think still laughing?
Because we're not done yet.
Nope, now it's time for the creator rate, and it's at this point, Mide's like, okay, this guy's not going to stop. I am going to barter with him to go ahead and give him the codex so that way he can leave us the fuck alone. And so it's initially framed as a betrayal because, of course, Quick Thinks would think that. But in actuality, Mide just gave them basically a dumb rock.
Yeah.
Under the guise of it being the codex so they would fuck off. But it seems like Quick Thinks apparently knew this, beat us to the punch, took Roundrock's hostage, and got the codex back.
Into which Alexander is actually properly revived.
And we are accidentally brought back into time, re-witnessing
the moment that Alexander was first summoned.
Yes, because Mide actually was hiding the fact that she did successfully bring back Alexander the first time for her and her troop. But the problem is that when they did, it was unstable because, spoilers, this is actually causes a time paradox.
Yes.
And so the involvement of our party and the goblins forcibly disrupts the summoning ritual, which causes the Enigma Codex to be shattered in the first place, causes Mide's love to get absorbed into Alexander, and goes ahead and basically... it gets Diane absorbed into Alexander and basically forces the events of everything to happen, including Schrodinger falling off of Alexander because the cat was on deck when everything went down.
Yep. Which
you can start to go ahead and fill in the cracks here if you're familiar with time travel mechanics as a plot device.
Yeah, it's a little confusing, but it makes sense. It's a closed loop.
Yes. So eventually, it's revealed first we have a fight in the past, as it were. We're still in Alexander, but we have a fight against the Refurbisher.
Yeah, the Refurbisher is basically the garbage disposal of Alexander.
I think this is easily my least favorite fight of the entire
I do not
series.
blame you. This one fucking sucks.
So the gimmick is that Refurbisher gets corpses of downed robots and can actually revive them to use as additional ads.
Yes. However, once they're downed, if they're not dumped into the molten magma when the platform drops, it will reintegrate itself into its body, and if it does that enough times, it's a wipe.
Right. And you also have to avoid falling into the lava yourself, because that's also an insta-kill.
Yeah, I believe our party was having a rough time guiding the fucking robots to the right platforms.
Yes, that was definitely an issue. But the Refurbisher does eventually go down. The next fight we have is against Eambrick's Strikebox.
Lamebrick's Strikebox.
Who basically just plays as a big executioner bruiser for Quick Thinks. And his gimmick is that he has electric rails and balls, as well as a whole bunch of traps that go off. And you have to time your dodges to the traps going off.
He will then also summon a giant mech thing that will try to crush you, and you have to destroy it before it moves further down the arena.
Right. It was that one was actually fairly easy by comparison.
Yeah, I did end up dying to that one because I didn't hit a mitigation properly. Mm-hmm. But it was alright.
And then probably our favorite meme of the boss series.
Forward and back, and then forward and back, and then go forward and back, and then one step forward.
Yes. So
Cruise Chaser.
Cruise Chaser, who was your mount for the majority of it still is the mount that you used to chaperone me around
Pretty
when
much.
I needed help through ARR and Heavansward.
Yeah.
So we've listened to that theme ad nauseum. At least for the first opening minute.
Yeah.
Because I don't think our trips would take longer than that.
Yeah. Cruise Chaser is a bit of a rough fight because it introduces something called a limit cut.
Oh, do you love QuickTime events?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's something different. The active time maneuver is what that is.
Okay.
Where you had to hop onto the Cruise Chaser, and then it will blow up the platform, and then you had to hop off.
Yeah, I completely beefed that the first time it was done, but I think that was more input error on my part than it was anything in regards to any difficulty with it.
Yeah, but basically, Limit Cut is a move type in Final Fantasy where it does a lot of damage, and I was playing tank at the time, so I had to deal with that, and I was not having fun.
Well, I'm glad. You look like you were having fun riding the Cruise Chaser. Well, I got blasted. Yeah, I think I got down like 2 or 3 separate times in that fight. I was not a happy camper with that one.
I will be honest, I have never seen a fight of Cruise Chaser go smoothly.
Uh-huh.
That fight always ends up either almost completely wiping the party or wiping the party.
Okay, but I think that is generally the bulk of Cruise Chaser. By the time that we realize this, the Paradox Shenanigans, we do end up getting in contact with Schrodinger, who basically agrees to help us after we realize that basically the journal that Slowfix was using to chronicle our events
Was the actual codex that Quick Thinks has been using this whole time.
and because Slowfix records in such vigorous detail, including writing down minor details like when a platform jiggles, Quick Thinks basically is able to plan everything because he knows exactly how it's going to play out up until the point Schrodinger turns on him.
Yes.
And as a result, that is the reason why he is so confident in knowing how everything's going to play out, even knowing that he was going to lose in the sun fight.
Yes. And it's at this point that we try to confront Quick Thinks, who then brings out the Prime version of Alexander.
Because remember, we've been doing this entire fight within Alexander, so a mini Alexander within your Alexander.
It's basically the Prime form. It's the truest form. It's the core of Alexander.
Who basically opens up, freezes time on... Oh, that's the other thing we found out. So basically, the reason that Alexander keeps reactivating is because by this point, they have activated Alexander's time travel mechanic.
Yeah.
Which, even if the heart gets removed, he can basically just go back in time and make the engine reappear.
Yes.
And which is why they've been able to slowly recharge it, even though we've been disabling the engines the entire way through. And so basically, they have also mastered the ability to stop time, which he attempts to do by having Alexander charge up its super attack, and it almost wipe you, Briggs, Wedge, and Sid all out in one go.
However, for some reason, the time freeze stops in the nick of time for us to jump out of the way of the laser.
Right. Which eventually leads to the fight rate proper, in which we're fighting Alexander in a demiplane of itself.
Yes.
And not only does he fight, he eventually absorbs Metal Justice in order to reach his true form.
Well, that's actually in the... he doesn't absorb Brute Justice in the fight that we did.
Okay.
He does that in the Epic of Alexander, the Ultimate Raid.
Okay.
Because not only does he absorb Brute Justice, he absorbs Cruise Chaser as well to make the head.
Right. Okay, so it's only...
You're only fighting the body of Alexander.
Okay.
What he does is he unfolds his wings
Okay.
halfway through the fight.
Okay.
Yeah, but I get what you mean. The transformation aspect looks cool, but that's not until the Ultimate.
And so at one point... time portal opens up. You actually jump through it and send yourself back in time to where these robots are enacting the time freeze on you as you're about to get blasted, and therefore you have to defeat them so that you can escape for your past selves.
There's a closed loop within the raid.
That we keep telling ourselves that, but I don't think we know what that actually means.
Yeah. But yeah, basically, if you do not stop those in time, it's an actual wipe.
Yep.
Which is kind of funny.
And so I do not remember much of that fight other than it being a mad dash of damage, but it was absolutely wild.
Basically, a lot of times you would have to stack on each other, but if you had another thing floating over your head, you were not supposed to stack with the.
Yeah, I do remember that. Yes.
Yeah, that would get me as well. It would Alexander would also do cross attacks where it would
duplicate itself and do lasers across the battlefield.
Yes, and then after you did the. Oh, I almost forgot about this. After you've stopped the time travel shenanigans, before you stop the time travel shenanigans, you had to fight a whole bunch of ads because Alexander summoned its body to do a laser attack. And in order to fight, to not die to that, you have to do a tank LB3.
Yes. That was the other reason I didn't play
Tank
in that one. Although I might go back and just do at least Alexander just for the experience.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, it's not that hard to do the tank LB because they give you a countdown.
Okay.
And you usually have you usually want to start it at about 5 when it says 5 seconds.
Okay.
Yeah, because that's how long it'll take to activate. But some bosses, there is one boss in 5.3 that does this thing where you have to do a tank LB, and it does not give you a timer.
Okay.
You have to figure out the timing
you have to time it yourself.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, for that fight, may I recommend going either DPS or something else?
I will talk to someone and get some advisement, depending on... I believe that would be Shadowbringers?
That's Shadowbringers.
That is hard going to be me in my Dark Knight arc, so I'm probably going to get some advice on that one.
All right, fair enough.
So, by the time that you finish Alexander Prime... Mide and the rest of the group has managed to get back into the control room, deal with most of Quick Thinks' minions, and free free round rocks from the transportation device because they need someone who has read the codex in order to activate it. And so round rocks is basically being used as an interface.
She's basically being used as a living battery.
The pilot.
Yeah.
For the time travel, but. Either way, so apparently during this time, Quick Things has also read the Codex, and so he's able to control Alexander without needing Round Rocks in the control chair, only for Alexander to deny him.
Yep.
And basically fry his brain.
I should also mention at this point we had thought that Quick Thinks was dead, but he was actually alive because he was actually a fucking cyborg.
Yeah, he augmented himself to the extent that he is more machine than goblin now.
Yeah.
But Mide basically puts an end to him by putting a cap in him.
Yeah.
Very cold style. And it's at this point that we find out that Diane, Mide's love interest, never died, but he was absorbed as a part of Alexander's soul.
Yes.
And so he still exists within a portion of his consciousness and basically says, Alexander's too fucking dangerous to be left in the hands of anyone.
Yes.
And so I'm going to basically pull a time reset on us, and I'm bringing us all the way back to fucking square one.
Yeah, basically it's saying that Alexander tried to create its own perfect utopia. But the problem is that it's a primal. It draws on too much ether. As a result, any utopia that it would create was doomed to collapse.
Entropy would naturally go ahead and lead to its decline.
Pretty much.
And
so it basically said, I am putting myself in stasis to never be used again.
And until Diane basically convinces me to stay with him, and then eventually, and he himself basically is going to put himself at the start of the universe, basically making sure that no one can get access to him.
Yeah.
However, in doing so, Mita decides to still stay with Diane, falling into the etheric core of Alexander to be reunited with him.
Yes. And eventually, they do escape Alexander.
There is so in the process of going back to the start of time, eventually they either disable it or put Alexander into stasis to the extent that the two Al-Ra no longer need to be inhabiting it.
And so they are dumped back several hundred years in the past.
Well, several hundred years in the future from when they stopped it, but several hundred years in the past to our time.
Yes.
And therefore end up being
their own grandparents.
Progenitors to the line of Al-Ra that would eventually become them.
Yeah, so they are their own
we go through a full... I'm trying to remember what it's called, because there's a science fiction term for it. Convergence.
Yes.
They go through their own convergence, because in science fiction, there's basically the belief that, okay, eventually technology reaches a point where we hit a convergence. Basically, science becomes magic.
Yep.
And the only thing to do from that point is Big Bang us back to square one. Metamorphosis of prime intellect, if you want to see that in a sort of a narrative form, it is fucked up as far as science fiction goes, but it is incredibly detailed, and it's it explains that concept very well.
Time travel always gives me a headache.
Time travel is always a fucking headache, but all's well that ends well. Eventually everything starts to go back to normal.
Sid will consider using the technology of Alexander in the future, possibly.
But they still need to work out all the kinks. Biggs and Wedge go about their time, and Slowfix is still going to be stuck at their little stop, riding along as they go.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's the Alexander raid for the most part. Oh, I should also mention that there's a slight little bit of 1.0 knowledge. You know how Mide got the Enigma Codex was from that strange man?
Yes.
That was an Ascian.
Ah, yes, they do go over that there was an Ascian involved in...
Yeah, that guy was from 1.0.
Does he ever come back?
No.
Okay.
He's pretty much dead.
Okay.
But he basically gave Mide a horn which allowed her to create the Enigma Codex. That same horn is a powerful relic which is also found on the staff Tup Samadhi of Louis Soir.
Which is the
Lance of Light.
The Lance of Light, which is still seen in the background in the solar.
Yes.
Which
is kind of an interesting thing, because those horns don't really get referenced much.
Ah, okay.
So we don't know what animal they come from or what they are, in fact. But they're wellsprings of vast amounts of magic, so which allowed them to create a fucking primal.
Right.
Excuse me.
All said and done, there were two bits that we didn't discuss, but they don't have really any plot relevance. As part of Unalkai's backstory, you can also get re-challenges for Ravana and
Bismarck.
Yeah. Bismarck I did do in a group raid, which is functionally no different, except for when Bismarck knocks you off his back, you actually have to get off on your own volition. If you linger, he will actually let you fall, and that's an insta-kill.
Right.
And then I think you and I ended up doing Ravana unsynced.
Yeah, we did Ravana unsynced, and I basically killed it in like 30 seconds.
Right.
So I can't explain that.
We don't have too, but my only understanding the difference is that Ravana kicks down the walls surrounding his battlefield.
Yes.
And so that way, in the later stages, his offense gears become basically don't get ringed out.
Pretty much.
So I don't think there's too much I missed out with that one.
The fights don't get super complex and stuff until about Stormblood.
Okay.
That's when the mechanics start getting a bit more complex.
Okay. But I think that generally covers our Final Fantasy XIV update. There is one thing we did, but we didn't talk about. Hatching Day and Little Ladies Day.
Oh yeah, the fuse thing.
So the Hatching Day and Little Ladies Day came out at the same holiday span, so the two events got fused into one. The main attraction this time around
is a mount.
Was the mount the pretty Gabaloo mount?
Pretty Goobu, yeah.
Oh, and Final Fantasy 15.
Oh yeah.
We also had the Final Fantasy 15 event, which came out, which basically Noctis gets separated from his buddies, takes a mini vacation in Eorzea, and then in order to get sent back to where he came from, he has to fight this world's version of Garuda.
Yeah.
Which has the gimmick of...
Well, technically, we fight his version of Garuda.
Oh, we fight his version of Garuda.
We fight his version of Garuda, because in Final Fantasy 15, you fight Final Fantasy 14's version of Garuda.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
And so you pay the favor back, and the gimmick is it's you and Noctis, and you have the ability to do link strikes.
Pretty much.
While he's there, so it was an interesting gimmick.
It was an interesting
fight. I don't know if it was just the scaling or whether they treated it as an unsync raid, but it definitely took too long.
Yeah, it was a little too long. I didn't mind the hangout sessions for the most part.
Those were pretty fun, and of course they had to put in a fishing joke somewhere.
Of course. I always... Look, I'll just say this right now. 15's not my favorite Final Fantasy. Mm-hmm. But some of the quiet moments with the boy band, pretty much, I kind of enjoy.
And of course, I mean, I have a new recipe was a meme for a long time.
That's it!
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the main reason to do it was to get the fucking car and Noctis' outfit.
Right, I did get the car, so now I can drive you around for once.
Yes, you can.
Just don't expect me to be doing it anytime during Stormblood.
No, I'll drive you then.
Okay.
But yeah, so now that we've done all that, let's go in order. What did you think of the patch quests?
The patch quests were absolutely amazing. This one really knocked it out of the park. They knew what they were doing. They very much had a distinct idea of how they wanted to end. The biggest problem with ARR is they had way too many different directions they could go to and couldn't pick one.
Right.
And so by the time that we got to like a sort of cohesive by the end, it was so confusing. It almost made me wonder, why did I even bother with the rest of it? Mm-hmm. And it feels like there was too many open ends and too many loose threads. And I'm glad that we had a very coherent, very simple way to end off this story piece. I think if you had swapped out the plot for Nidhogg and Thornton and swapped them, I think you would not lose out on much. Mm-hmm. And I think Heavansward would have ended way stronger. And I think Thornton ending as a patch quest would have kept, I think, the tone. Because I was emotionally drained after the Nidhogg quest. I kind of like, okay, I need a cigarette. I need to go just take a sit in the bar. And
yeah, I do not blame you.
I think like emotionally, that's how a main story should end. And so I was very surprised having it as my patch quest.
Yeah. Well, I don't see the patch quests as filler or nothing or anything or not separate from the main story. Mm-hmm. Until I see a second set of credits, it is still Heavansward. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of a little hard to wrap your head around that. Mm-hmm. Am I making sense?
No, you are, because you usually like the idea is that you have not, because like we get credits at the end of the main scenario.
Yeah.
But we know Nidhogg's still out there.
Yes. And
it's like, had you swapped it and left Flordane's machinations to the end, and it's like, oh right, those still got like had that as a stinger to the end of Heavansward versus I like the happy tone that we've beaten the evil Pope guys, but The dragon?
Yeah.
I feel like tonally, even though they never brought up Nidhogg at the end of Heavansward, I feel like that's still hanging in the air. And at least at the end of Heavansward, to me, that was more on my side. It's like, great, we're done with Evil Pope, but dragon?
Yeah. I'm going to tell you right now for Stormblood, the patch quests go beyond 4.3. It kind of goes all the way to the end practically for Stormblood.
Okay.
But the last patch of Stormblood really forces you into Shadowbringers.
Okay.
Like, it's like, okay, we are pivoting hard.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think just given the few beats of Shadowbringer, I can see why that would make sense. I do not know all the story details, but I do know that there's a major tonal shift, Shadowbringers into Endwalker.
Yeah.
And, like, that is the reason why, you and I have again talked about this off camera, why a certain bumbling inspector does not make an appearance in that patch.
Right.
And just because of the tonal shift. As far as some of the side content, the Alexander raids is absolutely gorgeous. Clearly, they still were working out on what an Alliance raid should look like.
Yeah.
But at least...
Well, it's not an Alliance raid. It's the normal raid.
Or they're clearly still working on what raid should look like.
Yeah.
But it's at least more coherent as the theming of it and what it means to go through that. Obviously, they had a very good story going through it, but I think at least some of the there were some fights in there that obviously are just more filler to explain the story and not part of, like, the big advertisement.
Yeah.
And so those could have been tweaked more to be more tighter, I think.
I suppose, yeah. And then finally the Warring Triad, which is just a little small thing.
The Warring Triad is okay. I think of the content that we went over for, like, this is what you need to do before we get to Stormblood, this is the one that I feel like is the most out of place.
It's the weakest. I will be honest.
Yeah, it's the weakest of the bunch. Alexander has an incredible storyline, and just the overall bosses are great. When we talk about Void Ark has its own unique plot twist, which I find very enthralling, and just because it references different Final Fantasy villains, I at least find it interesting. Obviously, Manderville's a treat whenever he shows up, so honestly, of the bunch, yeah, the Warring Triads is probably the weakest.
Yeah,
of the sets.
I just wanted to get you through it because it's relevant for the role quests and Shadowbringers, for the quests after you finish the role quests and Shadowbringers.
Yeah, and I understand needing to have that build up, and I'm hoping that in terms of the is there other storylines similar to Warring Triad that show up later?
For Stormblood, we have the Four Lords.
Okay.
Which is you're fighting against the four cardinal direction creatures.
Okay.
It starts off with a dungeon where you fight Genbu, the turtle.
Genbu, the black tortoise.
And then you have 3 single raids.
Okay.
Which is against Suzaku, Seiryu,
and Byakko. Okay.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. I think that one at least will be fun, at least because of the context of where you're going and who they are.
Yeah. The thing is, I wish there was a 4th raid to fight against the Golden Beasts.
Yes, that obviously...
Because that is technically the main antagonist of that arc.
Uh-huh.
But you don't really technically fight it, you just have a cutscene with it.
Yeah, that's kind of disappointing then.
But I think it might have gotten cut for reasons.
It would be nice if they went back and put it in.
It would, but they probably aren't.
They should. That doesn't stop them from doing overhauls before.
Yeah.
I think the only other thing of note between now that I've done was there was a quest line, basically you meeting with a Lalafell in which he basically wanted to learn more about Louis Soix. And so you go talk to NPCs who are alleged veterans of the 6th Umbral Calamity.
The 7th Umbral Calamity.
Of the 7th Umbral Calamity. And basically get their bird's eye, their in the ground perspective of the Battle of Soix and the Battle of Carteneau.
Yeah.
So, that doesn't, I don't think that does anything as far as
All it did is it was give you a framers kit and give you some more context for Louis Soir.
Yeah, I think that's basically what it was to remind people, hey, this is how people thought of Louis Soir. He wasn't just some mad prophet.
Yeah.
Because he very much comes across as that out of context.
Out of context, yes. Which is why next time we are definitely going to get you through the coils of Bahamut.
Okay. So for the next episode, as far as the overall content, it should be pre-Stormblood patch quests.
Yeah, which is 3.4 to 3.56.
Yeah, which is, I think the only things that happen mainly, the dungeons are Zelphatol, which I have done, and Baelsar's Wall, which I haven't done.
Yeah.
We're also going to discuss Void Ark, the Manderville quest line.
Oh, yeah.
And then...
I guess if we can, we'll try to do the Coils of Bahamut.
Probably the Coils of Bahamut will be the next thing that we aim for. I don't think that'll be too difficult. Worst case scenario, we do that unsynced.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was going to do. I was going to drag you through it unsynced because you know how Alexander was like going through a mini dungeon and then a boss?
Yes.
It's much bigger in the Coils of Bahamut. It is going through an actual dungeon and then a boss at the end for each turn.
Ugh. Okay.
Which is why I am just getting us through that as fast as possible.
Okay. All right. I think that goes ahead and works it out. Hopefully, but by that time, I will have Machinist to 60. I probably need to start leveling up my Astrologian, and then hopefully I can get... I'm hoping Blacksmith to 60 by the time we have the next episode.
All right. But until then, this has been Ray.
This is Leo.
And you have watched the Big Cat Aethercast. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you all next time. Later!